Carrie, Khaled, Brian, ready, good. We will call this workshop to order. City Clerk, if you'd call a roll, please.
Mayor Owen.
Here.
Vice Mayor Colodey.
Here.
Commissioner Hartman.
Here.
Commissioner McGirt.
Here.
Commissioner Sacks.
Here.
Thank you.
All right. So real quick, to just kind of set the stage. This is a meeting that the commission asked for. I think a couple of different times we mentioned when we had strategic planning workshops or other things, hey, we always come in with this real kind of, here's the agenda, you got to talk through these 10 things, and then it's 11:30 by the time we finish those, and so there's not a lot of opportunity for us to just kind of have a free forum where we're talking about kind of stream of consciousness. Here's the thing, these are things that have come up that just haven't worked into a mayor commissioner comment, and even doing those, there's not a lot of time for debate and kind of discussion on those items. And I say debate, really just kind of getting a feel. Hey, is this, what's the commission's pleasure on some of these items? So that's what today was. And so you'll notice that the published agenda was pretty light because there really is an agenda. It's set. It's going to be set as we go. The agenda is that we have time to discuss whatever is on our minds. We did, through the city manager, forward one-way communications to forward some things to the city manager that were distributed out. That's on the back page of the agenda that was published here. May not get to all of these things, but these were just things that were on the mind. It may hit some things that weren't on this list also if something else comes up organically or you forgot something. So from a timing standpoint, we'll start with public participation if anybody wants to speak, and then we'll kind of dive in. It's going to start with public participation if anybody wants to speak, and then we'll kind of dive in. It's scheduled to go until 5. I'm happy to wrap early. I think 5 will be a hard stop. And as far as how we go through it, you all can be thinking if you have a better idea, but I've been thinking about how to get through this and make sure it's as fair and balanced as possible. I was thinking we would just each person start with, introduce one item, and then let's have a discussion about that item, and then we'll move to a next person introducing one item of theirs, and then we'll, just go through that process a few times as we check off items off the list, or again, it can be things that weren't on the list. So hopefully that allows us to get through as many of these as possible. I realize now I have more bullet points than everybody else, but some of them are quick and easy, so it's not. We may not get to all my bullet points.
Pick one.
All right. So with that, we'll first open up public participation. Yes, come ahead.
Hi, Lisa Martin, 618 South Pine. And I just, looking over the points and wondering, who cares about what. The one thing I noticed was what I am concerned about is the biggest potential problem for New Smyrna Beach, when obviously the coronavirus and the tourist industry, that's not predictable. But we know flooding is predictable, and I didn't see anything there about sea level rise and real coastal resiliency, like how do we build, what do we do, what steps are we taking to minimize it. In Irma, there were at least 50 known houses that were flooded, and probably more that didn't report. So I'd love to see you say, hey, you understand, in a day or two, we could wipe out all of New Smyrna Beach. I think you probably remember Mexico Beach in Hurricane Michael. So just thought for inclusion.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing. Any other members of the public wish to speak? just came in. Yeah.
Perfect timing, Jeff.
Perfect timing.
Thank you, Joe Dluback, 3587 Casalta. 4 quick items in 3 minutes. The street width developments in some of the communities that we have do not permit emergency vehicles to pass when there are cars parked on both sides of the road. I think the only solution for those that already exist is to have no parking on one side of the street, but I don't know if that's possible. But I think it's an issue. Just coming here, I saw 2 fire trucks going in the other direction with their lights on, and there's no way that with even one side parking could find itself to a location that needs to be serviced. The second one is that several weeks ago, several meetings ago, there were talk about the developments in a strip mall north of, on 44, this side of 95. And there was discussion about a 7-Eleven going there, which raised the interest of some of the members of the Planning and Zoning Committee. But they reminded everybody that, hey, we're just there to do a rezoning, not to judge on what was to go there. I guess I'm encouraged when I've read the paper recently, and as late as today, where Palm Coast is considering the banning of $1.11 stores or dollar stores in various locations. And I guess I would challenge you to consider the same thing for our gateway into the city. The third item has to do with the construction on 44 in Glencoe. I think all of us are surprised at the way that that looks. I'm not sure whether there's an issue with boundaries. A lot of us are surprised about the wood construction versus the blocks. I happen to be coming from the dog park yesterday afternoon, and it's going to be incredible. It's going to be a disaster with the traffic pattern that's going to develop with, I guess that's what, a 200-300 unit complex. Again, I'm wondering about, there were 2 buildings that showed up very close to the main road. And a lot of us are surprised because if you look, there are a couple trees there between the patio and 44, and the branches are overlaying into the patio. So those trees are going to come down, and we have sort of been promised that we will never see that. Whole complex, I think, is going to be a pipe dream. There was last year a moratorium on Route 44 for future development. I don't know what resulted to that. Unfortunately, I wasn't here for 6 months. And lastly, I see kind of a long-term challenge. I brought it up once before, and that was for all new construction to have solar panels. It's something that's been implemented in Miami. I was encouraged when the commission chartered a study to look at solar panels for the city buildings. And one of the comments was, well, you know, it's kind of iffy for that, but well within the budget to have those imposed on a residential sector. And so I would challenge you to increase, you know, the scope of that study to address the residential. And lastly, I think Florida in general has a problem with water.
Yes.
And I'd like to see somehow, along with the conservation of energy with the solar, some way to recoup and put into the aquifer rather than throwing into the rivers and streams the water that's coming off of the roofs that we have.
All right.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. I was a little liberal with the time today. I figure if you take the time to be here in an afternoon meeting like this. So thank you very much. Appreciate the feedback. Any others? Wait, it's just you, so you got anything? All the rest are staff, I think. All right.
They may have comments.
They're welcome to have comments. I'm sure they'll have comments after the meeting, for sure. All right. If no others, we'll close public participation and kick it off. Anybody got a different idea on how to go through this more efficiently or effectively than what I proposed, which is basically just, we'll come down the line, Vice Mayor Colodi, just talk about one topic and then give us all a chance to kind of chime in on that one topic. And, you know, things won't necessarily be decided and committed today. It may just be, you know, hey, there's support to go forward. There's, you know, we'll kind of see how this stuff evolves. Some of mine is just kind of brainstorming type items. So everybody okay with that approach for the meeting?
Yes.
All right.
Quick question, Mr.
Yes.
Mayor. Are we voting on anything today?
So I don't think anything today will be voted on, no. It's really just kind of, I mean, may judge the head nods and see if you've got the support you need, and if so, that you know to have staff maybe add it to a future agenda. So, but no formal actions are really coming out of this. So.
Good.
All right, Vice Mayor, we'll let you lead off and then come down the row.
Okay, the first item that I listed is changes I would like to see in our land development regulations aimed principally at the intensity of development. We're kind of governed by what our comprehensive plan says as to how many units per acre, so on and so forth. But each piece of property has specific areas that deserve more protection. We took a big first step by eliminating wetlands from the density calculations. However, in my experience, a 25-foot buffer on a wetland is, for all intents and purposes, meaningless. When you think about a buffer, what's it there for? It's to protect whatever you're protecting, such as the wetlands. When you reduce it to 25 feet, what you do is you increase the outside influences on that 25 feet. It's not wide enough to prevent the actual wetlands from being degraded. You're introducing a lot more light into that buffer area. You're drying the land out. You're changing the environment for birds, turtles, whatever that goes into there. So that buffer is really insignificant. Now, the mayor sent out a for-your information thing about a big wetlands corridor that goes through Central Florida. If you read through that and you go into the middle, there's a whole section that deals with how this corridor, to protect the ability of animals to go north and south, has a choke point in it, which is only a half a mile wide or a quarter mile wide. And it states right in the article that half of that is really meaningless because it doesn't provide the natural environment that was there before. We should look to increase the wetlands buffer. We should work with the water district on that. Coming from an area that had a greater affinity for protecting wetlands, there was things such as wetland transition zones. Let's say you have a higher quality wetlands that deserves a 50-foot buffer. Now, that could infringe upon a property owner's rights to develop it, but a wetland transition application would allow that buffer to be increased in certain areas by up to 50% of the width and a commensurate reduction in it in areas that the prescribed distance may be in excess for protecting the wetlands. It allows flexibility for a developer, and it also provides much greater protection for the wetlands. I would like to see us, as we did with the other wetlands study we did, look into that as a way to better protect those environments. Now, second part of what I would like to see done is this will go very good to protecting the environment. But as been pointed out by Commissioner McGurk, when we did Venetian Bay, we set aside hundreds of acres for wetlands, principally, for nature. We really didn't set anything aside for the people who live there. You go through there now, you see row upon row of streets, many of them narrow, many of them with driveways, no room to park, no room to play. The last section of the Palms has little neighborhood parks in it, like one lot taken out here and there where you can go and sit on a bench. I propose we modify our regulations to set aside a certain amount of developable property, uplands, so to speak. 5%, 10%. Developer, all he has to do is set it aside, maybe put a plant grass on it. Now, he's going to complain that we're interfering with his right to develop the property. It may require some modifications in the standards to allow, let's say, a section of townhomes, something like that, to be built in there. Same density, yet we're preserving open spaces. It's a more livable way to act out there. Those are two principal things. There's so many other development standards. I know we're looking into it. I know we're piecemeal attacking it. But by dealing with the wording and everything, we're not really doing the overall picture. And I think we should seriously consider that. And I would like your opinions as to whether those concepts are good. Details as to how to implement it can come from our professional staff or a consultant if we have to get one, which I hate to do. But that's what I would like to see. That's why I list that as my biggest priority.
Okay. So just a quick question, and then others can chime in. But so I think what I heard you say on that second concept was the setting aside developable property and making up for it. Overall density on the project remains the same, but you basically give like a density bonus in certain areas where they'd be able to go maybe a little more dense with townhomes or something to make up for what they lost, but it preserves some open space for public. Is that kind of
Yes,
what I heard?
if they've
Okay.
lost any. They might not even have lost any.
Yeah, okay.
Perfect example is the Florida Days subdivision. They have 2 community open spaces in there that I've spoke to some of the residents out there, and they like them very much. It makes the ambience of the neighborhood much better. So it's a concept that's well accepted, and I would like to see that put
okay.
into our regulations.
All right. Comments, questions, commissioners? Jump in.
You want to go down the line?
Yeah, let's go down the line. Yeah, that's fine.
And I'll try to be brief, Commissioner Colodi. In the previous commission, we did have a battle about buffers, and we had attorneys at the podium saying that it made most sense to average out those buffers to 25 feet, and I thought this was nonsense, especially considering we have a development, its buffer is 25 feet. You're allowed to fertilize within 15 feet of a water body. And so technically, wetlands are water bodies. So a 25-foot buffer averaged out. Remember, we had the discussion, Commissioner McGurk, and we didn't have the political will to expand those buffers. Maybe it wasn't defensible legally or not, but we ended up with 25 feet. I would love to, along with Commissioner Colodi, and maybe this time we can find the legally defensible way to expand those buffers because of things like fertilizers and other noxious items that diminish those wetlands. So I'm definitely for that, Mike. And, we set aside, when we do PUDs, we make them set aside land for conservation. Well, let me tell you from my experience, coming from South Florida, those lands are set aside, and in 5 years, everybody's forgotten about it. The developer comes back in, and he sees an empty lot, and he says, let's develop it. And the next commission says, let's develop it. So any tract that you have left over gets developed. And so we piecemeal into development, into urban sprawl, without saving a corridor. So just to speak to that, you had another point, Mike. No, that was,
I think that was those
Yeah.
two, yeah.
my
Commissioner
comments.
McGurk?
Well, I think I agree with what you're saying, Mike. I think this plays into what my number one issue is going to be when I come up, which is kind of setbacks and dealing with new developments. So I agree with what you're saying conceptually. I think it's a good idea. My question is, the devil's in the detail. What happens when we get into the detail? How does this affect the development of the property? Are we going to go too far? And I think that's where you're saying we need to pursue this further. You're acknowledging having staff take a look at this. I think this works well and much better when you're dealing with raw lands, big tracts of property. But when we get into the smaller pieces of property, individual properties, say along Riverside, along in the historical, not the historic, but the old part of the town, your neighborhood, my neighborhood, Riverside, we have to be careful that we don't make a piece of property obsolete to where an individual can't replace a pool or can't build a home because of that. So that's what I mean by the devil will be in the detail, where we don't create any undue harm or hardship by trying to make sure we get much better development out west where we have all these wetlands and what the determination of a wetland is around a Riverside Drive, so to speak. So, and I like it, and I think, and I'm going to add on to that when we come to my issue, which is going to be very similar to developing setbacks. One second. Jake, I wouldn't describe the wetland issue of a 25-foot buffer as a lack of political will. I think the issue presented to us at the time and how it was presented, there were a number of complicated issues that arose, which did not make it an easy issue, which leads me to go back to the devil's in the detail. Anything can sound good from a macro standpoint, but when you get into the details, that's where the challenges occur. And that's where I think Mike's acknowledging that, and I'm agreeing that conceptually it's a good idea. Let's see how that looks like when we get into the details. Make sure there's no unintended consequences.
I forgot to mention that those standards would apply to PUDs and any residential development of 25 homes or greater. That complies. So I agree completely. Leave the little lots alone.
Commissioner Hartman?
So I have some of the same, I certainly support your issues, but I do have some concerns that we create some undeveloped areas in the future. Currently, right now, you're looking at a minimum of 2 acres along State Road 44 to develop something. If we start carving out other little pieces like that, it's going to make harder for people to develop some of these areas. So I think it really, if we're going to, and almost everything is a PUD along 44 areas like that. So I think it, like Commissioner McGurk said, the devil's going to be in the details. So how we go about that is going to be an interesting conversation at some point, but I certainly like your idea of having maybe have a buffer area and then including a transition area to minimize some of the other things that can be done along there. I certainly could support something like that. I just don't want to over-restrict it to where we've created small pieces of property that nobody can use or develop. The other issue with the green spaces, I was either out in the audience or on the dais and heard the discussion that years ago they used to have larger lot size so that you could get your number of homes on your per acre, and the powers that be decided that the smart growth was clusters. We cluster the homes, we create more houses in a certain area, which meant smaller streets, and we saved larger areas of green space. So are we going to go full circle here and go back to larger lot sizes so that everybody gets a little piece of green and nobody gets a huge green space? Or just where are we going to go with this? Because, it's devil's in the details. So
I'm not advocating larger lot sizes
okay.
at all.
All right. Those are my comments. Thanks.
Okay, and so I am, I'm in agreement. I'm not so concerned even with making development more difficult. We have a premium product in New Smyrna Beach, and we continue to have interest and investment in our community, and I think having higher standards to do so are okay with me. So I'm not so concerned about that. I am, though, concerned. I don't know if the audience realizes sometimes, pretty much any time we say no to a developer, it just happened a few weeks ago, and it's happened a few other times. Pretty much any time we say no, we can barely gavel down the meeting being closed before their attorney's on the phone filing, all kinds of things. So I am concerned that whatever we do, that we have all of the right protections so that we can confidently, we or some future commission and staff can confidently enforce what is done without fear of having to sit here and worry about a no vote equating to a lawsuit for our city. And I think everyone would share that concern. So to the extent we have latitude in that regard, to the extent staff, planning and legal can tell us, yeah, we're within all the right, we're not depriving anyone of rights that they can sue us to get back. I think this is very favorable. I agree with you. 25 feet seems very minimum. I mean, this isn't an area of particular expertise for me, but I agree that it seems like the right thing to do.
When we increased the buffer, when we made wetlands not included in density, we studied it very well. We were very careful on the regulation, and we never heard a peep from any developer that it was inappropriate. So yes, follow all those guidelines.
Yeah.
And if the commission does wish it, I'd be more than happy to sit down with Brian and try to work out some type of parameters as to how to move forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've heard pretty large support, so I'd say, yeah, if you wanted to try to start working with staff to get something back to the commission, and again, acknowledging the devil's in the details, we're not going to probably jump from this to a resolution. It's probably going to be kicked around a little bit. And then to the second item about the setting aside, you know, I think what you've outlined is certainly something that is doable. I think would those be, my concern is always the ongoing maintenance of those. Like in 10 years from now, I don't want the city having to pick up the bill for maintaining those, anything related to that, you know, park space or any of the others. So how do we make sure, like, I don't know if Florida Days, is that an HOA? Do they you pay a fee to keep up that? And I mean, I guess most of them that would be the case, but what if those things can fold and collapse and all of a sudden then cities get on the liability train for that, so.
Well, what I would say, I don't want us to own any of them outright.
Okay.
They should be in a HOA. If the HOA fails, all they're going to do is go back to nature.
Yeah, okay, just making sure, that'd be my only concern with that, is just, I don't want I don't want to take it over, so, and then I think a whole different debate is, which hopefully somebody will come up with, is this whole notion of smart growth, and what does that look like, and large lot sizes,
I'll
small.
actually bring that up
I saw
during
you
my
writing it
first
down, so I was hoping you might,
I got
so,
some,
yeah, because I agree, we've done a few circles, so, all right. Good topic. Hope we gave you some good feedback and you know where the commission stands. And so, all right. Commissioner Sachs, you're up. First topic. What would you like to talk through?
Commissioner Sachs. Yeah, you know what's pretty important, conserving valuable lands. And that AOB site has been hanging out there like a cherry for the citizens. We've had a lot of proposals. We even brought it to the citizens to decide whether to sell it or not. I'm glad somehow we got pulled back from that. But I have a plan. I just saw the latest plan, and the latest plan showed mostly parking. And I certainly don't want to turn that waterfront loop land. It could be the emerald in the crown of our waterfront loop. If you provide enough parking for a few additional truck and trailers for the boats, have that set aside to the east where the others are, have enough parking for the Marine Discovery Center, and just a few spots for people to enjoy that land. I believe some people are tossing around the idea we need parking in the city. Let's use this as a shuttle stop. Let's put a lot of spots there. I saw too many spots there for my taste. And you see in front of you, our previous city manager had staff put together a very tasteful plan that I would like you all to consider and look at, because I think the citizens would be very proud and happy to have their own piece of waterfront. Yes, we do have the Manatee Riverside Park, but can you imagine the exception of having a easterly view of the river, that really cherished Indian River, and a southerly view? So we're already heading in that direction. I would hate to see us go for a fine grant, go for a lot more parking. This plan looks very much in order and very tasteful. So guys, please consider that for the future. I think we can make a real gem for us all to be proud of, all of our citizens. Now, Lisa had brought up the consideration of resilience towards global sea rise.
So I was going to try to do one topic at a time, so we can just clear that one. Then we'll come. We're going to make a few more passes through.
Just think about AOB and what best use we can use.
So I think the
Publix is not a good use.
Remind me, the fine grant, we voted that down at the last meeting, right? We're not going for the fine grant, did I recall? Okay. And, okay, just want to make sure on that. Gentlemen, thoughts on AOB site? Where we at? Where are we at? And where would we like to go? We'll go,
Which way you want to start?
start here and then look back. Yeah.
The AOB
Moving on
site,
every time.
yes, the reason nothing has been done is because the community is so divided on what should be done with it. The vote to sell it, which I don't agree with, but I have to acknowledge that was voted on, was actually a very close vote. So I don't support selling it, and I have no problem taking that issue. What should be done with it? It's a great question. Everybody has a different opinion. I'd like to see something like the city marina get expanded. I don't want to see high dry stacks, anything like that, but I think there's a tremendous use in the area for waterfront property to have some sort of marine use, low impact, low intensity. Am I married to that idea? No. Is there other ideas? There's a lot of good ideas with the property, and I think the problem is there's so many good ideas with it that nobody can really agree on what we should do with it. And hats off to the commission that finally gets that accomplished. I don't know if it's going to be this one or a future one, but it has always been a challenge because people are so passionate about what they think would be good there. But the good news is I don't hear a lot of people saying it has to be only this. I think everybody agrees that, I would assume, we don't sell it, and whatever it is a low impact use.
Okay.
So first off, I think we should call it Waterfront Promenade and stop calling it AOB, because nobody knows what AOB is. I think this also kind of plays into the master park plan. I mean, do we truly need another water park? Do we need another place like this? Or are we already saturated? Maybe we could better spend using it for something else. I'm not opposed to surveying the residents again to see what they truly want to see done with the piece of property. I know it was a close vote last time.
Well, that was to sell it.
You mean like a
That was
ballot
just-
referendum?
Huh?
Or when you say survey?
Ballot referendum, or if we could just do a mail-in survey.
That's one of my items.
So, yeah, if we could do some kind of a survey just to get a feel if there's truly the interest in leaving it as a park setting or undeveloped, or sell it again, because there's still a group of people out there that want their little small niche grocery store. So it's not my piece of property, it's their piece of property, so I'd rather they have a say in what we do with it. Okay. I do like the marina idea. I think the marina, we're short supply on boat slips.
City marina.
City marina. So if there's some way that we can tie that into it or lease it to somebody else to do that along that lines, I can support that one also. But the biggest thing is, how does it fall in with a master park plan? Where are we? Are we short on playground equipment, or do we just need a passive park? Do we just need picnic tables, that sort of thing? And for those of you who haven't seen Michelle's original plan for that site, you really ought to go look at it, because she did an amazing job. With the water feature and the whole 9 yards. So if we're going to go that route, that's something to be proud of. So take a look at that at some point in the future, because that was pretty impressive. Thank you.
Okay. Vice Mayor?
Well, it's been about 10 years since we've been looking at this. I don't think we need any more information. I think we just have to make up our mind and do something. I'm not in favor of commercial development of it. Put a marina out in the water if it's possible with the location of the intercoastal out there. I have no problem with that. I do have a problem with leaving it exactly as it is, because right now 3/4 of that property goes unused except for overflow boat park, trailer parking. So nobody will really want to develop anything out there or go out there and have a picnic on a weekend when they know they're going to get run over by trailers. What we've done is very good so far. As to the plans that were presented, the one that Jake had put up on the, Commissioner had put up on the screen, showed about 10 or 11 parking spaces. When I rode past this on my way here, there was already 14 vehicles out there. So we need more parking of some sort. The original plan developed by our staff had quite an extensive increase in the number of boat parking spaces. I felt that was a little too much. I would like to see it concentrated on overflow boat parking and leaving on either plan that we talked about recently had 1.8 acres of an open field out there that trailers could not park on. People could have a picnic on. It could be set aside at virtually no cost except mowing it, which is what we do now, for the city. It would be nice to increase the waterfront amenities. That would be good. I remember going to see fireworks from that location on the day that the fireworks set fire to the canopy out there. We were sitting near it. Perfect place to enjoy the waterfront after you moved your car. So I would like to see us move ahead with organizing it a little better. If we put in no more permanent boat parking, I'm fine with that. I would just like to see us control what's out there a little bit better. Now, on some of the plans that I honestly don't like concerning trolleys and so on and so forth, when we do have a special event, either on Canal Street or Flagler, that large open field could be set aside for overflow parking, so long as people know ahead of time not to set their picnic blankets up out there. I think we should move ahead. Doesn't have to be a fine grant. We spend some money out there making the place a little better. Maybe we should look to spend that much additional money, perhaps moving the fence out to define what is not a parking area. But I would like to see us keep moving ahead. I don't want us to get to a point where the last vote to turn it into commercial property was taken during depressed times. I don't want to see another vote pop up during those times and we end up selling it. So I'd just like to see some development go on out there.
Okay. But by development, you don't mean a hotel.
I mean development into a park.
Yeah, okay. I just don't want you to get misquoted on that.
No.
He said he wanted to see development out there.
Commissioner Hartman is 100% correct on the comprehensive plan for recreation. I think that's very important too. But I just can't see that plan saying, let's sell it.
Yeah. So my concern on this is, when was that vote? Do you remember? Was it 2012, 2007? So we're now 13, 14 years away from that.
Let me think.
Yeah.
Might be able to pull some facts up as you talk.
The straw poll?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was
It was a vote.
People call it a straw poll. I keep hearing that term. It was a ballot measure. We could pull the language up
Yeah.
here.
It was a straw vote. It wasn't, I believe, well, per Frank Gummy, it was not a referendum. It was more of a straw ballot. And it
Correct.
was like 56 to, 46 or 48 or something like that. 40, thank you.
Yeah, if you can find that ballot, I'd like to read that ballot language again. I've read it before, and I keep hearing this straw vote, but I didn't read it as a straw vote. It read to me as a ballot measure that asked people what they wanted to do. And I don't know how that became a straw poll, but
That's exactly what it was. It wasn't a directive, you shall sell this.
yeah.
It was not that.
It was a casual vote to say, hey, guys, what would y'all like, sell it or not sell it? It was not a directive, so the commission had
Gotcha,
the
okay.
flexibility to
And so
not
that's where
have
they're
to
saying
do
it's
what they
trouble.
said.
Okay. So here's my concern. Let me just say this. So, Commissioner McGurk, your point is well made, that this has been kicked around and kicked around and kicked around. Here's my concern is, and Commissioner Hartman, you're right also. There's people, I can find you, out of 10 people, I can find you a few that want to do probably 15 different things with the property. So, but my concern is, if it ever gets sold, if there's ever a commission that gets up here, if there's nothing permanent done and there's a commission that gets up here and it's ever sold, then that's it. You can't, all this other stuff's out the window. We have no other choices at that point. So I guess my concern is this, that we continue to, because there's so many good options and so many things that could, hey, wouldn't it be great if it were this and this and this, that we continue to punt that decision, and then before you know it, it ends up some future commission, and maybe it's bad, maybe there's some tough time that they never last, and yet we make some radical move and it gets sold, and then there's collective community regret from that. So that's my concern, is while we figure this out, be it a master park plan or, some massive survey of everyone again, or however we figure out what is the right thing to do, how do we make sure that in the meantime, if that happens to take a little time and we have, new leadership at the city that may not see it the way we do, then how do we make sure it isn't, sold out from under us in some future? And that I don't know.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Since this was an item I wanted, is so passionate
go for it.
to me, I had asked previously, and at the time you guys didn't want to consider it, but I think we should change it from marina designation to recreation conservation. That might add some further protections than that. And, Commissioner McGurk and I differ on many things, but something that we might need to consider.
Here, let me give you a vision here. This is my vision for North Causeway. The city owns the marina. The city owns the angler's property. The angler's property lease is going to expire one day. That's going to come back to the city. Then we own the AOB site. The only property in between that is one individual's, Mark Purnell's. So I can see a vision someday down the road, 20, 30, 40 years from now, where the city where the city can buy, if the voters would approve it, that property. And then the city marina can be expanded through what is the angler's property, what is Mark's property, both operating right now as private little type marinas. So that's the future. And so changing the zoning on that to say, well, no, there's no possibility that we make that a marina. I see some sort of public use city marina going all the way around that North Causeway to the existing city marina. I say that's a possibility. I'm not saying that is what has to be done, but I think that is a good vision looking 20, 30, 40 years down the road.
You seem to be supporting Mayor Berenger's thoughts of expanding a marina. And if we want to go in that direction and have a marina the size of Daytona's, if that's the people's wish and the commission's wish, that's where we will go. And I don't know that I don't know if it's even sustainable to have a 500 slip city marina. And we'll have discussions on
So you're putting words in my mouth, and I'm going to get very irritated when someone tells me, "Hey, I heard you want to put a 500 slip city marina in the city," because you're making that up. I never said any numbers. Mayor Berenger, you did say a 500 slip.
If we look back at the record, we might see that I did not say you said that. But
Jake?
you could have that if you go in that direction.
Okay. By the way, it was not Mayor Berenger's opinion. It came from an actual study that was done during that time. So it wasn't his opinion. It was actually, we paid a lot of money for a North Causeway study. One of the suggestions was to use that as a marine use consistent with what the surrounding area is.
Was it not changed from conservation to marina?
Was it changed at that time?
No, was not.
Was not.
Was not.
What is it now?
It's marina. Go get your facts
And what
straight.
was it before?
Marina.
Okay, I'll check on that.
You do that.
I'm not so sure.
You do that, Jake.
Okay.
I'd appreciate that.
Okay. Is there a way, Brian or Kyle or Carrie, is there a way to just see if we can find that, or some staff member can go find that while we continue talking? I'd like to just see if it was changed at some point from conservation to marina, the AOB side.
Living over there, I'm familiar with it. It was always marina,
Yeah, we'll see.
at least for the last 20 years.
We'll see what the record shows. I do think it's important that we, things like that. I mean, I've heard things. So I just got an email today or yesterday from somebody who thought that this project that's going up over here, not the City Hall project, but the adult living facility was a city project. And I responded to them because they were attacking me about the site. And I responded to them, hey, I agree with you. We'll talk to the contractor, but it's not a city. That's a private project on a private piece of property. And they replied and they said, hey, misinformation abounds. All the neighbors around there believe that is a city project. That piece, that it was the city subsidized something. So there's a lot of things that I think they get a life of their own, and whether or not it's fact or not. But I do think it's important that we operate in.
Some of us have a place to go someday.
So, okay.
I have a suggestion on this.
Go ahead.
That we have the staff look into a minor improvement to site to separate the recreational areas so we can include some money in next year's budget, as opposed to going for a grant.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I don't think going for a grant at this point is the right thing. I think we just heard it kind of play out. I think there's this fundamental, what is the long-term vision for the AOB site? And, I think that the weight we all feel is I think Commissioner Hartman said this, I will tell you and I have never talked about that.
What's that?
What you just laid out, but I have laid out that exact same scenario of, hey, I don't know how much marina space we need, but we have a real opportunity to create a waterfront promenade type area through there. Again, long term, right. But that could be, defining. And no, I don't think any of us want 500 boat slips out there. I'm not saying it's just some giant boat parking lot. I'm saying, right. But think about, if you've been to Cincinnati, they have this amazing waterfront area that runs along the river there, and you could really do something special there over time. And so rather than turning loose, I think the fundamental thing is rather than turning loose of it, make sure we hang on to it is important. So
yeah, that concept is in our LDRs now, our comprehensive plan, as part of the Coronado Island plan. So that's in the regulations now.
Okay. All right. So I don't think we're any closer to a solid plan for the AOB site. But
Waterfront promenade.
The waterfront promenade.
I think AOB was administrative office.
It was, yeah. That's what it stood for. But
it's better than a sewer plant.
Yeah, better than call it a sewer
plant. It was a treatment plant. There's no doubt about it.
Question: was it once hospitality, Commissioner McGurk? Would you know?
I'm not going to get into it.
Yeah, we're going to staff see if we can figure out what it was or if it changed. Yeah, and I look, I want to have free discussion, even if there's things we disagree about. We're going to let's get some of that out on the table in a professional manner, as I know we all will. And then if there are things we need to try to get facts straight, I don't want to try to work that out here. Let's see if staff can help us, and if not, we'll get it afterwards. So, all right. So, AOB site, next step is what? I mean, I didn't hear clear direction. I mean, I heard one suggestion from Commissioner Hartman, Colodi, Vice Mayor Colodi. I expressed my concern is, how do we make sure that it doesn't get sold out from under us so that we can't do, then all long-term vision stops at that point. So that's my thing, is whatever we would have to do that.
Well, I don't think there's any, I understand. Right now, I think everybody agrees no sell, but a future commission can do whatever they want unless we encumber it somehow.
A future commission could sell this building if they wanted to.
Yeah.
So the point is, how do you make that difficult? And I get it.
Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah,
I don't disagree with that.
Yeah.
And gentlemen, just let me add, drive up to Port Orange and take a look at their new waterfront park. It's really beautiful. So something that we might consider down the
one where they cut all the trees down on the river?
Maybe
it was a beautiful piece of property until they cut every beautiful oak
possible.
down.
But they made a nice park nonetheless.
There's no trees on that property.
Yeah.
All right.
It was.
Okay. I'm going to have to separate you two.
I think I'm We're having a nice lively
I know, this is-
casual debate.
Yeah.
This is good. I know, this is the point, yeah.
So I think,
All right, you're up, go ahead.
I'm up.
Commissioner
All
McGurk,
right,
you're
so this dovetails very similarly into what Vice Mayor Colodi said. And this goes back to a planning and zoning, a workshop with the Planning and Zoning Board that Jake and I requested, and it didn't go anywhere. So my issue here is the new residential developments that we're seeing out west. The setbacks are too small, particularly in my eyes, the front yard setback. So what you're getting is you're getting a 20-foot front yard setback, which is about the length of a car. And the developers say we have four cars accommodated for, 2 in the garage, 2 on the driveway. And we all know that no one parks in their garage. It's full of all of our junk or, whatever you want to call it. So you get only 2 spots, and then you can get something like a boat or a camper or a jet ski that takes up a space. And a lot of the parking gets pushed out into the street. Except the problem is the streets were never, the planned unit development was never designed to have parking on the streets. The streets aren't wide enough. So you end up getting a little middle lane that you drive through. So what I would like to do, if possible, is make bigger the front yard setback and make these streets wide enough to accommodate street parking on both sides. I would love to be able to say, which is a pipe dream and probably not realistic, any roads and developments that have been approved, that haven't been built yet, can we retroactively go back and start doing this? I know that's probably not possible. It's a pipe dream. I get that. But definitely in future plan unit developments, I think this is a big issue. It cheapens up the neighborhood. And here's the problem, because I don't want to propose this without acknowledging the problems that it creates. The problems that it creates is if we make the lots bigger to accommodate the parking, where they're getting their density, they're going to lose density. So, and the whole point of smart growth was to do the clustering. And if you did the clustering, it was a high density. So we're now going to, this would be pushing back against that a little bit. And what does that mean for the developer? Does it make it impossible? What unintended consequences does that have? But I think going forward with 10-foot front yard setbacks and streets that can't accommodate parking on the side of the roads is not what we should continue doing. Now, smart growth issue came up at the TPO just recently. John Cheney, the county's traffic engineer, we went from old neighborhood grids for streets. And the way you do it now is you have one entrance in mostly and one entrance out, or maybe a back entrance. And you make a lot of cul-de-sacs. The problem that is creating now is it creates tremendous backups during certain times of the day where people can't get out onto that one road. The grid system allowed them to disseminate through the community at many different areas, not creating traffic jams. Now, that was discussed as a potential problem before these kinds of development plans were implemented. We're seeing it, and the county is actually recommending that we go back to the grid system. Now, make very clear that's not my issue. I'm simply bringing that to you as an FYI. This is how this thing is starting to come full circle. I think there's a lot of smart growth strategies that were adopted that sound amazing. And what we're seeing is some unintended consequences. So that's when I say before I adopt anything, I want us to always take a look at the ripple in the pond, the unintended consequence, so we're not having to backtrack and go back to things. We can't be perfect, but it's important. So let me clarify. I would like to make the front yard setbacks bigger to accommodate more cars and widen the roads to accommodate cars on them. That's it.
Question, if I may. So does that front yard setback, is that essentially then, if you don't change anything else, the road's wider, you just have less front yard at that point, or you have less yard somewhere, right? if you don't change anything
If we
else.
don't change anything but widen the road,
Yeah.
yeah, if we widen the road, you would come in,
There's anything else.
there's not enough setback to be able to widen the roads more.
Yeah.
Because you're already at like 20 feet, which 20 feet is pretty much, that goes to the end of their building to the right of way on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
So if you actually kept that 20-foot front yard setback, you would come into that. You would have
So you
to
want to push the houses further back.
push the houses further back, maybe make less of a set. There's a lot of different ways it may be able to be done. But I want to recognize that if that cluster represents 40% of the property that's developed, maybe it should be 50%. There's no easy solution to this.
Yeah.
But I don't think what we're currently doing makes any sense. It cheapens up the neighborhood, and so there's, and I don't want to say that I know the solution, the technical solution.
Yeah, okay.
Because those guys over there understand this stuff to a degree that we don't.
Yeah.
But yes, at a 10-yard front yard set, a 20-foot front yard setback, you couldn't keep that and then just make the street bigger.
Yeah, okay.
So if memory serves me right, we did that the last two PUDs that we approved, the old commission, was we pushed them back, said absolutely no parking on the streets allowed. We pushed them further back and did gutters and stuff for side yards, remember?
I remember that.
So we
Yeah.
did that on the last two.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, none of them have come out of the ground yet, so we don't know what consequences those have had. But I certainly agree with you. I think that's the way to go. I don't want to see where now they have no backyard. So then they're screaming, well, I need a pool, so, now I need my green space in the back, so we need to develop that and stuff. I think another thing that would have been one of my topics is we need some way to, and I think it's one of yours, Mayor, is we need to enforce some of the PUDs that we currently have. I mean, there is no enforcement. Unless there's a complaint that does this or does that, I think we should look at a staff person to go back and look at all the old PUDs, all the new PUDs, all the constructions coming out of the ground, and make sure they're compliant with what they agreed to today, tomorrow, and in the future. Whether it's a full-time staff person or a part-time staff. I think that's the only way that we're going to actually really get a handle on this, is to actually make them live up to the agreement they signed. Because they're certainly going to make us live up to our end of it. So I think however we do that, I'm certainly in favor of that. I agree. If you're going to make the streets larger, they're going to double park, or they're going to put a big motor home out. They're going to cause problems. I don't know how you do it. One of the ways that Winter Park did this was they put all the garages in the backyard. So you had to drive down the side yard to get and parked all your cars in the back. It worked in some neighborhoods it's not going to work. So it's just all going to depend on where we go in these future things. I think that if any PUDs going forward, then we all have that mindset that this is, we're looking at cars off the street, they need to be in a driveway, period. And if we push the houses back or whatever, we get that accomplished.
Yeah.
But I think enforcement is the key to this whole thing, is somebody needs to be looking at that constantly.
And so you bring up, we did, and the way that was written in, as I recall, it's in the HOA guidelines. And the problem is, if everybody has to do it, nobody's going to enforce it through the HOA. So a lot of times the HOA works, but other times when it's impossible for you to park your car, when there's nowhere to put it, you're going to have to be in the street or jump on your front yard. So a lot of things in HOA can't control, and they're very strict about. But if you create an environment where it's impossible, you can't squeeze water out of a rock kind of thing.
Yeah. Vice Mayor?
I agree. There should be slightly greater front yard setbacks. To Brian, is there a minimum road width in state standards?
State standards, a 10-foot travel lane would be considered a minimum width. And we have, there's a lot of subdivision design issues you've just brought up that are interrelated, and I'm not
Correct.
sure how much depth we want to go into.
Okay.
A 10-foot lane would be standard. We have a lot that are 10 or even narrower here in New Smyrna Beach. I don't think road width is the key driver of this problem that we're hearing, because it's very common, and that narrower road width does help traffic calming. It's the density and the demand of vehicles on the street that's leading to that where cars are parking opposite, which is a violation of our code, and police can come out and enforce. But when you have 40 and 50-foot lots with a 25-foot setback and belongings in a garage, it's a lot of vehicles on the street, especially with service vehicles in the daytime. So the way to do it is to increase the setback and spread out the homes to decrease the demand on the street.
Well, I wouldn't want to go that far, but we do have to look at the issue because there are too many cars out there for these narrow lots. Whether we have to make a provision when we look at a development that they enforce no parking on one side. It has to be something to provide the emergency access through there. We don't want to overpave things because that's not good for the environment. So we have to be.
When you say you wouldn't want to go that far, meaning, obviously we can't change existing, but even for new construction, what he proposed, you wouldn't want to go that far? What's the concern of that? Just curious.
My concern was that some states have minimum roadway widths that you can put in. So my only concern was if there is one. I think that some of these should be a little wider out there right now. When you have these narrow lot widths, you really do need that. You can't park in the back because the lots are so narrow, and you have setbacks, side setbacks. Side setbacks should probably also be increased because I have gotten in the past a number of complaints, air conditioners too close to a property line, so on and so forth. Yeah. So it's in the details, and there should be some change in those details. You know, I've worked with it all my life, and it's not a happy solution. So
just to note, beachside where the roads are only 10 feet wide, there's nobody parking on the road because you can't. It's only 10 feet, right? So do you make them wider or do you make them narrower?
Well, there's a happy medium.
Yeah,
I'm in an area which has large minimum lot widths. The roads are only 18 feet. And you can't drive down these roads whenever there's a landscaper there. It's really, really rough. So it requires a detailed look at the minimum widths. And maybe we could make the next PUD coming in a guinea pig for how we want to address it. So maybe the staff can take a close look, knowing our concerns when the next PUD shows up, which I think will be soon.
You know, what's interesting, I remember when I first came to the city, Fairgreen Avenue was about almost like 33 feet. So at the time, you know, the commission wanted, they say, this is too much asphalt. You know, you didn't need a 33-foot roadway. That takes a lot of maintenance. So when you do the resurfacing, it takes almost 3 times as much as your normal road. So they went back to the 22-foot, which is the 11-foot lane. And there are some streets here in the city, like maybe 9 or 8 even. I mean, this built back in the 60s and 50s. So it's a full circle.
Yeah. You mentioned Fairgreen, I think, and Jake, I'll come to you next, but you mentioned Fairgreen, and I think something Brian said resonates where there's as we talk about, Magnolia and all these other streets, and you think about traffic calming, I mean, one of the things that I studied when I was looking at the Magnolia issue initially was this concept of the narrower streets has a natural calming impact on traffic. So when you get to something like Fairgreen, that's the one that it goes over towards, that crosses the railroad tracks, right? It's going, So that road, I mean, it feels like a speedway. And I guarantee you that people, I mean, look, I grew up here, I sped down that road. It's because it feels wide. Whereas you get on some of these little streets right here, like a Faulkner or this street here, and it just kind of has this natural calming. And I mean, I can't explain the science, but so I think that's something to keep in mind.
And that's exactly right, because in transportation, the number one thing, if you really want to control speed on a road, narrow the lanes, make people drive on their toes. The more you widen it,
Yeah.
the more crashes you have, the more
Pretty
speeding you have.
yeah.
There's just because you relax.
You have a comment idea on this,
So,
man?
yeah, I got to weigh in on this one because public safety is primary for me. And we have to build public safety into our PUDs, right? You're a transportation guy. You look at the disparaging difference between Magnolia and Live Oak. It's like a car's width wider. You can almost park cars on both sides of Magnolia and almost get two cars in opposing traffic. A fire truck, hats off to our drivers in fire, getting around these streets and not clipping vehicles. It's amazing. But what's more important, a wider street or a pool in somebody's backyard? Is there a point where we have to say, listen, we have to, in these PUDs, these nice developments, shouldn't we say have designated visitor parking areas instead of parking on the street? I know that's not difficult, it's not easy to plan, and can you ask them to park on only one side of the street? We need to make sure if they're going to park on both sides of the street, that developer has to make sure that two cars in opposing lanes can travel and one not have to wait for the other to go by, or a fire engine, a pumper, or a ladder cannot travel. We've had two, like Sable Palm and then the one on Esslinger. We looked at those and like, oh my God, we can't get vehicles down. So can we have the authority and the legality to do that, to impose that necessity?
Yeah, and one of the things that, we'll probably touch on it a lot today, I think I have it on one of my items, but sitting up here and writing the rule is one thing, but then, we just heard a presentation from our police chief. I mean, they're already understaffed to just, I say understaffed. Our staff are already working extremely hard, higher loads, than many of our surrounding communities to just execute and try to keep, the basics. I mean, having to go through and try to, who enforces that? And that's the challenge, is that you start talking about the impacts to, we have a new, something like Venetian Bay, let's say we change that rule, or Coastal Woods, let's say we could put that rule in. It'd almost take a full-time person to just keep that enforced in that area. Now, maybe not over time, maybe once you got it established, and so I don't know, that's something else to just keep an eye on all this, is that in some ways the easy part is, although it's not easy every time, but let's say we come up with a perfect solution, then it's about making sure that that's followed through day to day, year after year, and there's ongoing cost to that, or can be ongoing cost to that.
And we need to force our developers to provide, if they're going to build a 3 and 4 bedroom home, and a lot of those children grow up and they're driving, now you've got 4 vehicles, you can fit 3 in the driveway, maybe in a 4, and then they're going to have visitors and friends, and they're all going to be in the street. So we keep creating, we have these constraints in our old neighborhoods, and we keep, doing it in the future.
The interesting thing about the older neighborhoods are usually not curved. So we're able to pull up on the grass in the right of way.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of little details that factor into all this. But yeah, all the old neighborhoods, it's never a problem if you have people. You just pull up in the grass.
See, I liked where Brian was going. I mean, I think you relax, and it's kind of what we were talking about with smart growth earlier. Like we've got it so crammed into an area, and I know that's appealing to some. That they've moved here, they don't want to maintain a lot of area, and so that I'm not saying that product shouldn't exist in the market, but I think it, relaxing it a little bit, spreading it out a little bit. I think it would help on some of these other issues. So I want to go back real quick on the AOB. So that was in 2008. Oh, did you find it? I found it here too. So that was in 2008.
City Marina?
No, this is just a vote.
It's just the language.
Yeah, just the language. They're probably still looking on that other. So the language was, the city of New Smyrna Beach should sell, not may or must or anything, but should sell or lease the 4 acres of land that owns at 120 North Causeway for the highest and best private use, providing the greatest proceeds to the city for general governmental use when the land is no longer needed for municipal purposes, and that was a check yes or no type question. Again, I think the timing is important. This was November 4th, 2008. I mean, literally, every day the markets were tanking. And the results of that were 56.5% voted yes, 43.5% voted no. That was a total of about 12,000 votes that were cast on that. So just since we talked about it. And nobody sitting up here right now was a part of putting that on the ballot.
I voted.
Yeah, you might have voted for or against it, but nobody, it was a whole different commission that chose to put that on the ballot back in 2008. So, just to clear up that, and then hopefully we can get an answer too on that zoning at some point. Brian, do you already have something?
It's currently zoned commercial marina. Future land use is marina. Staff is checking on the history. It's not recently changed, so we're going to try and find out when it was, though.
Yeah, I mean, don't go back to the dawn of time, but just in the past, I think 10 or 15 years was the
Fair enough.
thought that-
I mean, I may have to stand corrected. I do know that the two islands are conservation.
Yeah.
The Rookery Islands.
Yeah,
So
I think so, yeah.
the other land, you never know. Jason
Yeah.
may be right.
It's not about trying to really, for me,
doesn't matter.
it's just about making sure we all have the good information. I'm
Right.
not trying to be right or wrong here.
Right.
Commissioner Hartman, I think you're up.
All right, where are we with Turnbull Creek? I mean, I have an idea, the last time we talked about it, that there was some disagreement as to whether we should buy this piece of property or not buy that piece of property. My whole point to that is we formed a commission to study it, to give us their input, and to make a selection on properties. We hired a consultant to do exactly the same thing. Now, they've came up with pieces of property that they think would be the best for conservation, preservation, etc. And then now we're wanting to say, oh no, we shouldn't have that piece of property, we should have another piece of property. So my concern is, where are we going to go with this? Where are we in the process? Because I really think that we need to have a real estate agent on file, or some RFP or something. And then the other part is the funding part of it. We still haven't gotten the money from the state. Money's cheap now. It's gotten even cheaper. Where are we going to go with this? Because, with what the UC's going, that kind of impact us a little bit on that, but I don't want to have 5 or 6 pieces of property and willing sellers and then not be able to do anything because, number one, we don't have any money, or we can't agree amongst the 5 of us which piece of property it should be. So those are my concerns.
Okay, just so brief update. So following the commission's direction at the January meeting, if you remember, there are about 20 parcels that the committee recommended. About 6 of those were right at State Road 44 on the north and south sides, and the remaining 13 or 14 was to the south, including the Sugar Mill Ruins RV Park. Those 6 parcels to the north, we've completed appraisals. We have 2 firms. We've completed 2 on each parcel. We are working with a group called the North Florida Land Trust. First, we went to the Trust for Public Land to see if they're not really a good fit for us cost-wise, but the North Florida Land Trust looks like it will be. We'll be bringing a proposal from them to you for approval at the March 24th meeting to essentially hire them as our real estate consultant, who would perform negotiations, work with the landowners, and bring back a negotiated price for the committee and ultimately back to the commission for approving or denying potential sales. After that, per your direction, is the question of whether we go on to that southern area where we didn't have 100% willingness from all property owners. So that's a brief overview where we're at the moment.
We're expecting the funding from, the reimbursement from the state, I think, by the end of March, correct?
Any follow-up with that? Fingers crossed.
I keep my fingers crossed, hold my breath.
All right.
Just like my IRMA money.
The
Comments, Chris?
Yeah, we did establish a procedure. We brought it to the commission, or to the committee. They adopted it, and they're following it. They're doing a very good job. I might have missed you saying it, but we're in the process of getting appraisals right now, and that would be the next step, is to hire a negotiator. I was very concerned in the beginning, as you know, because I kept bringing it up. I'm happy right now with the way it's going along. I'd love to be done with it, but it's going to take time. Now, I got a related question. That as a commissioner, obviously I don't interfere with what staff is doing, but I've been researching and contacting organizations that might provide us help. Am I doing something wrong?
You're just getting information that you're going to bring back to the commission or the manager, and, I mean, you're not making any decisions on behalf of the city.
Oh, no,
So
not at all.
you're just gathering information.
Right. You know, I've in the past worked in in this area, and I've been bothering past contacts to see what might be available. I'm waiting for a call back from the Nature Conservancy to see if they will fund a development plan and a process where we can take care of these once we have them, because I know that's come up, and we really don't have a plan right now. So they've worked in this town before. They worked with Marine Discovery Center on oyster beds, replenishing the oyster beds, also invasive species removal. So I don't want to step on anybody's toes, but I know we work very hard, and I saw on the agenda a grants person. If we can all fulfill that role somewhat and maybe give the staff some leads, I think it might solve that problem also. There's just so much money out there in so many diverse places, it's hard to gather it all in.
Okay.
So I take that I can keep bothering people.
If you bring the city grant money, I don't think you're going to get too many objections from anybody up here. I mean, obviously involving staff is needed so they can help run down and complete paperwork and all that, but I know you'll do that. But yeah, leveraging connections, I think that's part of what we really should bring to the table as commissioners, is trying to, our particular backgrounds or expertise, including our Rolodexes. So yeah.
Thank you.
Commissioner Sykes.
Mr. Mayor and my fellow commissioners, early on I had asked, hey, can we get cost share funding from agencies that do this kind of thing, that actually give us money to conserve lands? Mike mentioned the Nature Conservancy. There's the Natural Resources Defense Council, Sierra Club. A lot of these big land conservation groups help. And it kind of fell off the radar. And I think we should continue to look for those funds, maybe do other things in the future. And I know Commissioner Hartman wants to really push and go forward, and Commissioner Mike wants to get this done. But I wonder, I'm a kind of conservationist guy. I want to conserve these lands and have wetlands so that we can fend off storms and protect animals. But I wonder, are we piecemealing the rest of this project? Are we really doing good by buying more lands? And that begs the question, do we have to spend all of the people's money? Was that the mandate? Did we have to, if we borrowed $9 million, I believe, or whatever we did?
It was authorized for 15, we borrowed 9, yeah.
So I look at some of these segments and it's like we're making winners and losers. Are we correctly deciding which property is the best? When I looked them over, I saw Sugar Mill. Sugar Mill ruins, they don't want to sell. That's a real choice piece of historical property. And yes, any piece you can buy and save is good. But then again, we go down the line as we go south. Are we just picking a parcel here and there and till we spend out the money and calling it good? I just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Okay, so we can have some discussion on that. I wanted that very specific question though. Do we have to spend? I think it was like an up to. To me, it was like a not to exceed language.
Yes.
It's up to 15.
So I mean, we could in theory do nothing more. And we're accountable to the voters. They may, you may get some questions in the town hall, or you may have some that applaud it. I don't know, but I'm saying that I think is our decision. But I think it's just an up to. There's nothing. My understanding is, and staff is confirming that it's up to. We could have done 0, or we could do up to 15. We can't do more though. I think that's also pretty clear. From a bonding standpoint, we could have other measures, but we were authorized up to 15 in bonds. Haven't commented yet on this end on this one? You at least?
So, the only thing in my mind that makes me reflect back and wonder if we should have done something different is actually approving more money. We waited, we were expected to get some money back. I think Commissioner Hartman was the one who was really aggressive and was like, look, let's not stymie that money, and I think I voted against that. And the way I look at it is, this is a beautiful, beautiful concept. We've done something very few cities have ever done. They put their money where their mouth was to preserve development land. We then got a chunk of money to be able to go after more of these beautiful properties that contribute immensely to the to our estuary and to what makes this place great. So we formed a citizen committee. We have experts on all aspects of this. I can't imagine doing anything different other than let's try to get these properties that are so desirable as soon as possible.
Okay. So I think I shared Commissioner Sachs' concerns, if I understand it correctly. I mean, at some point, if we're just, let's fast forward a bit. Let's say we've picked up another few big parcels, but at some point, if we're just snagging some random 2-acre parcel that's not connected to anything else, there's low, I don't think that was the intent of, when I put my yes vote on my ballot and put my tax dollars on the line, that wasn't what I was voting for. So just buy some random 1-acre parcel somewhere, way down the line. And I don't know if that really gives us the ROI, the environmental ROI. So I think, but my confidence is that between all the groups you mentioned are involved, the Citizen Advisory Committee, the experts that we have on staff and elsewhere, and even our own, none of that will be done independent of this group or some future group. So I think that's the decision to be made. I think that's how we have to approach it. And if we can't land some of the bigger parcels, we might pass on, the acres here and there, because I don't think that's a great use of the people's money. But certainly if we can land a few other, large tracts of land and go back to this, kind of corridor type approach where we're preserving some large tracts that can create a corridor. Now, that corridor is, bisected by State Road 44, so I can't solve that problem. But from a east-west perspective, we're creating this northwest corridor up and down the Turnbull, but again, you got 44. So I'm okay with where we're headed. I wish we could move. I hope we're moving as quickly as we can. I don't think there's really any blockers at this point. I think it's just trying to make the right decision, and it's going to take time to do all those communications. So yeah, I'm comfortable. Yeah, go ahead.
So my view on this was we were looking at developable land along the creek. Just because a person has a lot that the creek dissects and he's got the lot next door, I only want the one that's got the creek in it. If he won't sell unless we buy both, then we pass to the next person. Because I think the creek is the important part of this whole puzzle. If there's another piece of property 2 parcels over, I think we should be concentrated on the creek itself, because that's truly, was my impression of what the referendum was to preserve the land along the creek for historic value, water management, environmental, and the wildlife. I don't want to be buying lots of land that we won't be able to do anything else with, just because, I own 2 pieces, you got to buy them both. No, I'll pass and go to the next person. Yeah. That's kind of my feeling on it. Kind of like Jake's. And if we don't spend it, we don't spend it. But if we certainly have it available to us, we need to do it, and right now we don't have it available to us. And we're talking about, oh, the state's going to give us our money sometime in the future, but we can use that money for other things, not necessarily to buy the property. And I don't think that was the intent of the referendum, was we were going to spend the entire amount to purchase property or put into conservation, if that's available, for that reason. So,
Right, say that again real quick. The state money wouldn't be able to be used for,
there's been discussion that, well, we could use the state money to do maintenance, or we could use the state money to pay for something else where,
by this
okay.
commission?
No, not by this.
Oh, okay, I was about to say, I don't remember that discussion.
So that's where I'm going to be on this issue.
Okay.
So if it's not on the creek or part of the creek,
So I'd even, to that point, I'd even asked at one point, there's some parcels that are, maybe they split the creek, but then they go pretty far off the creek. And I'd asked, hey, once we buy it, so we got to buy it all, but then could we, basically cut it in half and then sell the other part so that we don't have to your point, I don't need all of this,
Right.
and I want to make good use of the money. The answer, I think, was no, we can't necessarily get into that business.
Yeah.
So, I think that's what makes this issue a little complicated. You're concerned about, I don't think the not having the funding, the fact that we didn't borrow more money, which we haven't paid any extra interest on too, so we're saving a lot of money by not paying interest on it.
pennies.
It was, the pennies added up, I think. So the lack of money isn't a blocker right now. It's the lack of knowing which parcel to go buy and willing sellers at reasonable rates on those properties. That's the blocker at the moment. I think if we had that, the money, we can get the money. There's many different ways to get the money. And as far as using the state money, I agree with you. I think all of that should be invested back in. The ongoing maintenance of this should be next to nothing. It's passive park space. Now, if we want to partner up with, if we can find somebody else like Nature Conservancy or somebody and put some amenity, I don't know,
Or to help clean the canal.
Yeah, stuff like that, but as far as ongoing maintenance, that number should be about zero. So, yes, Vice Mayor.
Well, there really shouldn't be a need for much maintenance.
Yeah.
The purpose of the bond ordinance was to preserve lands for environmental purposes.
Right.
So we shouldn't be buying up lands. We should buy the lands along the water. Perfect example is one of the very willing sellers is Ellison Acres. It's a very high price.
Yeah.
It's to buy a school.
Right.
We really don't need that. Yeah. Maybe we could buy a conservation easement on their property. Concentrate on protecting the land for the environmental purposes. And if it doesn't serve that, we just shouldn't do it. I don't think this property should really be developed as a recreational facility. Simply preservation. That's what the people wanted, and that's what they should get. So that's what I would be for. A little bit of discussion came up that we could only use the bond money to purchase things, but the money coming back from the state, that we had a little more latitude on. I'm more than comfortable just buying more land with it. Yeah. That's what I would like.
That's my understanding.
Important question.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Regarding the large piece that we bought with the trust, are we not required to make any improvement like a primitive trail, which I'm anxious to see so the people can travel on
Vice
what
Mayor's
they...
brought that up a few times, I think, or one of the two of you have, I know.
And it has been explained by Nancy, who was in charge of that. They're developing a plan to meet the requirements of that grant, which may include a kayak launching dock, a trail to the water, but not much more than that. Interpretive signs, rename Holland Park to the Turnbull Park, whatever, something like that. But that's what we have to do, and I don't think we should go much beyond that.
And then quickly for the end, did we throw out the idea of conservation easements on other parcels that's still on the table?
Well, the bond money has to be for acquiring land, so the interpretation we got is we could use the refunded money for conservation easements, but the actual bond money has to be for acquiring the land.
Oh, so we can't use it to buy conservation. Got it, okay. So, how does that sit with, is that, using the refunded money to buy conservation easements versus buying actual dirt.
Well, I'm fine with that, but we haven't discussed how we're going to build a kayak launch or a dock or a trail system, So are we going to use the refund money for that? Because to me, that was part of the original night. This is where I differ with the city attorney. The purpose of that 9 million was for the referendum to buy land. If you get a refund on that money, that's still part of that money that we borrowed to buy land. So we should be buying land and not.
Yeah.
One clarification, it's a can you and a should you. So
Right.
you are with the should, and I'm just telling you what you can. So I'm not telling
Okay.
you what you should do. That's y'all's decision.
It's a great clarification. That is a good attorney right there. That's exactly right.
But to
We're
the
the should.
Ellison Acres piece of property, that's an opportune time to have you already have a building that would serve as an educational building for the youth and for Stetson and for UCF and people like that, which would allow us to go after some additional fundings through ECHO and other grants to do that. So I don't want to throw that out there without keeping all of our options open. If we can use that site or that facility for educational purposes for the youth, I'm sure your grandkids are going to want to go down there someday and go, oh, let me look at the creek and give me a class on the types of birds and fowl and that are living here. So I mean that would be an opportunity.
Yeah.
Already built. We don't have to come back later and build something. We would have something in place. But I'm not saying I'm voting for that. I'm just saying I want to keep an open mind.
I know you want to comment. I'm going to let you comment. I don't want to get all the way in on this particular topic. I think it would be a disservice. We're not here to pick individual parcels, so I don't want to have that debate here. We'll have that debate as this evolves. I think the real question was is this progressing and where do we land on that? But on that particular parcel, you're paying a premium for the 44 frontage in a commercial use, and so that the question is, can we justify that premium? And I don't know. You had a comment though. Go ahead.
So I'm sitting here and I'm listening to what Vice Mayor says, and I'm thinking that makes a lot of sense. And then I'm listening to what Commissioner Hartman is saying about this building, and my initial instinct is, I don't know. But then I think about what the people are constantly telling me about State Road 44. We don't want it to look just like Dunlawton. And then I think to myself, you've got property on the creek with a building with decent size frontage on 44. You can have a municipal facility that is a training center that you can also put kayaks into the Turnbull Creek. And I can't think of a 180-degree different approach to then developing State Road 44, denying people, with their private property rights. Then that just strikes me as, if people don't want it developed commercially, well, here's a piece that we can keep the way it is right now and not have it developed commercially. So I'm just throwing that little zinger in there because constantly hearing, I don't want State Road 44 to look like Dunlawton. And for the most part it is. But if we have these little pockets of these little gems, maybe we should consider that, because I can tell you that Volusia Forever bought from Jungle Road to the, I think it goes to one of the car dealerships. So we have a significant piece of property on 44 that is in conservation. This would add to a spot on Turnbull Creek for conservation. So I'm not married to that idea, but I'm just sitting here thinking, gosh, I don't know. That's kind of what I hear from people all the time, is things they'd like to see and not see.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I've said that last time we talked about this, that I think there's a real opportunity. We're just paying a premium product for 44 frontage, and if we do it, we're going to hear about that. But if we don't do it and a Napa Auto Parts store goes in there, we're going to hear about that too. So I hear you.
Gas station.
You mean next to AutoZone?
another. Yeah, they build in clusters. I don't know, it's like, yeah, they all come together.
Increase the buffers, won't be any land left.
Carrie just cringed a little bit. The problem, one thing on that, last thing on that, and then we'll move on. So is the creek is, you only pick up a section of the creek before you hit jungle, and I don't think, I've never done it, I'm not above doing it. You may have already done it, Commissioner Sykes, but I don't think you can get a kayak under Jungle Road.
Yes.
Can
You
you?
get a small boat with a motor to it.
Under Jungle?
Yes.
Okay,
At low tide.
all right. Yeah, I was about to say, at the right
Right now,
time-
it doesn't
right
look
time
like
of
you
day.
can because
It's really
so
overgrown on the other side of Jungle,
But no,
yeah.
you can go through. I know someone who lives on this side of it, and they take it all the way through.
Okay.
On a little, with
Yeah.
a little like 8-foot Kickstarter with a little kicker
Okay.
on the back.
All right. Well, then that really is an opportunity, because then you can, in theory, take that all the way out. You can
Yes.
probably navigate all the way out, pretty far here, so.
They actually will take you all the way out through Rosa Bay, through the 3 bridges, out to the intercoastal in kayaks.
Yeah.
So far, right.
Yeah, I was about to say, I can't do
It's like an
that.
overnight trip or
Yeah.
something.
Okay, so, I think I'm up, right? You were?
Yes.
That was yours, okay. Gentlemen, we are halfway through our allotted time, and we each have gotten, no, we've gotten 4 out of 5 of us have gotten one topic. I got a lot of things here. Let me see what I want to hit. We've touched on a few of them already. Some of y'all talked about them. Let me start with this. Because Commissioner Hartman touched on this as well. So we talked about a lot of things with these PUDs, like we should require this, we should make them do this. Public comment earlier was talking about the Beacon Apartments, and I think you said it at a meeting the other day, and it struck me. You said, I don't, when we were approving that, you thought you were putting provisions in, and now you see what's coming out, and you're like, that doesn't match what I thought we were getting. I think it was exact, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you said something to that effect of, that's not what I thought we were going to get in that.
I said that.
You said, okay, sorry, I knew somebody over here had said, all right.
Yep.
So, what I've heard before, I've heard other people in the community talk about is there a role that we need, part-time, full-time, I think we've got some volunteers that would honestly be willing to do it at this point, to have, we sit here in these sessions during these approvals, and we have an attorney sitting here, and we ask questions, and we have concerns from citizens, and we say, can you do this? And the attorney will say, we can do that. Yeah, we should or could or can or will or may, but you got to be real careful with what exact term they put in there. And then we all walk out feeling like we voted for something that solved some of the problems we heard. Maybe not all of them, but we did everything we could and still didn't deprive them of their rights and get sued. And then it starts happening. And then the phone calls trickle in, like, hey, wait a minute, this light's shining in my thing, or they weren't supposed to have this there, or they weren't supposed to be parking there, or they weren't supposed to be, and I feel like there's a gap there. And I don't know how to close it. I can't give you the direction of how to close it. I can just tell you that I think it's a gap we have, and I don't know how to, I think we need to solve it somehow.
I could give you,
Do what?
when I saw your,
Wade's laughing back there. I'm trying to-
Just a little kid.
Just a little guy.
he knows what he's talking about, wait. But I was thinking, honestly, the same approach we talked about with the new business.
Yep.
This is, I'm thinking about maybe a compliance officer. We could start with a part-time, and their responsibility would be to look at PUDs, look at these things and follow up on them, and then also follow up on the projects under construction. So this would be specifically a compliance officer for that purpose, so.
Yeah, and we need some, and it has to be someone that's kind of soup to nuts on this. They can't just come in and try, I mean, they'll have to start where they are now, but I'm saying on future projects, it'd be nice if they're sitting here, hearing the debate, the discussion, even the spirit of what we were trying to accomplish, maybe if we didn't quite get it to the letter, and we can help hold them, they can help us as a city collectively hold accountable, and it would be nice if it's caught as it's happening. So if they're visiting the sites routinely enough that they say, wait a minute, that's, it's not supposed to be there, that's not supposed to be that way, before it's, out of the ground and completely finished and if not irreversible, almost irreversible. So that's just my.
With solid waste, we didn't have a compliance officer, now we do. So I think I'm gonna look into this one, we'll get back to you.
Well, let's get some commission comments and see what the thoughts are. Forgot which direction we're going, we had been going this way, so we'll start with you, go ahead.
Absolutely agree 100%. Although I hold my final decision on before I look up soup to nuts. I'm not sure what that is.
Cradle to grave, beginning to end, it's a finance term, soup to nuts.
I'm teasing. Think it's a great idea. We do need it. There's been a lot of issues. And that apartment complex, you know, what we're going to find is at least that staff person can come up and tell us, hey, here's what happened. The city got this, the utilities commission had to cut this down. So by the time it all got done, this is what happened. And then at least we have some information to move forward on the next PUD to say, okay, what are we doing on this specific PUD to stop that from happening?
Yeah, and we only get so many more cracks at this, and we only have so much more,
Right.
you know, PUDs and developments that are going to happen. So we can't keep continuing to say, oh, we'll get better next time. Like we got to start getting some wins. So, Commissioner Hartman,
Yeah, I
I was going to take a break right after this too. But
this
you
was
go.
brought up like a visioning session ago that we needed some PUD enforcement or oversight or something like that. I mean, if we can do it for roll-off dumpsters, why can't we do it for PUDs?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, and, you know, I hate to keep dumping on Brian, because if I have a question, I kind of call him, and you know, sooner or later, he's just going to say, no more, no more. But,
No mas.
yeah, but, you know, and this, I mean, even if it's an internship or something along, if we can get a part-time with an intern or something along those lines, it would give, it's a great learning experience for somebody. And I think that we should seriously consider it in the next budget. So, or if we can do it.
I think we do it through building fund. I mean, it's to me, it would be directly available in the building fund. So I think I don't think it's a funding issue.
Right.
And I agree with you. Maybe it's an intern, or we have a unique asset in New Smyrna, which is a young retired population with expertise that we can tap into. Folks that I'm amazed. I meet some people and they tell me what they've done in their careers, and I'm like, oh,
like retired
well,
engineers.
we could use, yeah, right. Vice Mayor, do you want to do it? Is it you gotta resign and take that position?
Well, when I get to be 80, maybe.
There you go. When you finish this.
I don't think we should fund a new position, to tell you the truth.
Okay.
What I would like to see done is on our recent application for a special permit for a property farther out along Route 44 that we denied, special exception. One idea I put forth that the applicant was willing to do was to, as part of the PUD, fund an inspection officer for that project, a person that would go there every day, spend 2 hours a day there, and report back to our officials. We're not bearing the financial responsibility, along with all the various other costs that come along with just the base salary, all the health insurance and everything, but something that they would be willing to spend. Believe me, I've never run into a client who didn't do that. Right now, we hire people to do plan inspection for us out of the building department. It would be similar to that. It would just be funded for a specific project by the person creating the problems.
But fully, I guess there's always this perception, though, of the person who writes the check kind of owns the person. And so you're saying they're funding it, but we're directing the work.
Correct.
I want them reportable to our staff.
Yes,
and,
reportable to our staff.
Yeah.
It's like when you get a soil erosion permit in another place. The developers fund it, and the report comes back to the municipality. Not here in Florida, they don't enforce anything, but it's that concept. They are the people that require the work. I drive past the Beacon Hill Apartments. I haven't taken a real close look, but they're probably following the rules for what we approved. So that's a problem we created.
Yeah.
And as was brought up by a member of the audience, the buffer that we established is going away because it was kind of narrow and its effectiveness is gone.
No, I've had to stop myself from going out and doing some measurements because some of those buildings seem really close to the, I mean, it just, I don't know.
It was a recommendation not to have that. Unfortunately, it was
Last
approved.
comment on this item, and then,
I'll try to be brief. I had brought it up once before. Our compliance officers, building department, code enforcement, everybody that's responsible for allowing building in this city needs to follow these projects from A to Z. Okay? We grant them the permits and we let them have at it. I don't want us to be a developer's town. We're going in that direction. We should hold the reins. We should not have a wild horse unfettered. And that's where it seems to be going. I look at that project and think, did we actually give those apartments 10% more and not know it? I mean, I just, it's like one planning board member said, I didn't approve that. So I really think you walk into planning and you can't see their heads for the piles of paper in front of them. We're outgunned.
yeah. No, and that's why I keep going back to, I think I think the team members we have are doing everything they can. I think it's a volume issue at this point to me. We have more, we're a premium product, so. All right, so that was my first item. Gentlemen, we've each touched one item. Let's take just a quick break if everybody's okay with that. At least I need a break, so if y'all want to keep going, I can let Vice Mayor run it for a minute. But if y'all want to take 3 or 4 minutes, and then we'll come back and try to get through at least one more round. Get through all of it.
But,
All right.
but this is good.
No, it
Do
is.
another one.
Yeah, maybe after
Famous
hours.
last word.
Well, it's like, I got a job. Okay, if everybody's ready, we will reconvene. So gentlemen, if you'll indulge me for a moment, I noticed at least 3 commissioners had one topic, and that is this traffic calming. I saw it on, I think, Colodey's, Hartman, and Sachs. You want to talk about roads. I didn't have it on mine, but I'd say since 3 have it, let's just pause and talk about that one, and then we'll start over again with Vice Mayor Colodey. We're running out of time. We got about an hour left, so I'd say maybe we try to be succinct in our comments, but obviously let's get it all done. But Commissioner McGurk just said this has been good, and we should probably do another one. I agree. It's kind of nice, and I don't think we've handed too much work down to staff, so they might let us do one more. So let's just traffic calming. We'll kick off that one, touch on that one, make sure we hit it.
Okay, that was originally, Commissioner Hartman actually put it on before I put mine on.
Okay.
Actually put it on before I put mine on.
Okay.
We're kind of hitting these requests for stop signs, traffic calming devices, whatever, on a hit or miss basis. We have a procedure to look into these, like traffic studies and all that. They take a lot of time. We should have a procedure so that on a commission night, we're not approached with a petition with 700 names on it that we might want to approve. It could be a very good idea, but we should develop a little procedure to do that. I received a email and a phone call from a person concerning North Peninsula, where he wants a stop sign in because of accidents at his intersection are building up. And Khaled is doing a traffic study out there. But those things all take time. If we could streamline some type of procedure so that when these petitions do come up, that we've had a little bit of time and we got a little bit of background before we start peppering the neighborhood with stop signs. Nothing against stop signs, I like them, but we should be a little more consistent on that. And on the speed humps, we do have to put a little more effort in being fully compliant with them. There's recommended street painting and that type of thing that should give motorists a little more notice. Oh, yeah. Nothing we've done is improper, but there are recommended things that should be added to it. I happen to have it on my screen because I've done so many of them elsewhere. So we should just have staff try to give us a little more guidance on that, on the traffic-related issues. And I also think that the neighborhood council should be given a lot more input on these changes. The Magnolia Avenue traffic thing, it would have been nice if it's a neighborhood. If it came through our neighborhood council, we might have ended up on a more in-depth study. We spent a lot of money on that. Some of it was like, what if we do this? What if we do that? If we work it through the neighborhood council, it would address a whole neighborhood. We now have another group, the Garden District. We should establish I'm sorry, I'm kind of going away a little bit from where you started. But it's the same type of idea. You take a look at that. We have 3 or 4 of these districts. They end up in our land development regulations, our comprehensive plan. So a lot of effort's involved in them. Garden District, I know they've said they want to change the name of the district. They want to change the boundaries of what is now the Faulkner District.
Let's get back to let's stay on the traffic calming. I don't want to get too far off of the.
Yeah, these two, they're the same type of thing, saying that I would like us to establish more of a guideline so they can be addressed quicker for the general public.
Okay.
So.
All right, we'll just come down the line on that. I think you had on your list as well, traffic calming. What are your thoughts, concerns?
We're working our way through the problems. I don't believe anything we do there is a knee-jerk reaction. I had one comment from a constituent. We're using the best science and engineering of the day, and it happens to be the cheapest things, speed humps and stop signs. The chief will admit that I hope. They don't have enough officers to patrol every street. We don't have a traffic unit, so we have hardware that we can apply. And we can't calm these streets by re-engineering them, so we have to fall back on speed humps and stop signs. They are working. There is an overflow. It's obvious. We knew it would happen. Now Live Oak. I have the petition right here, gentlemen. The people on Live Oak responded right away. Right away. That's why I was so adamant the other day at the last meeting. So I would encourage my colleagues. Mike has Peninsula as a problem. If you, please apologize. I'm using everybody's first name. Mike has a problem on Peninsula, right? So we should look at that. Live Oak has a problem. A constrained, narrow street, poor line of sight. A couple of stop signs would make people happy, and they just might be a few % safer. We have Palmetto and we have Riverside. God forbid a problem occurs there, you get a petition there, you respond to the petition the best way you can. You do a speed study, you put out the strips, do the best you can for the residents. Our city is going to be besieged even more with traffic and cut-throughs. And you know, at 4 o'clock, I watch the people come out in the Magnolia South Mainland neighborhood. They come out on their bikes. The parents tell me they won't let their kids play in the front yard. We have to do something. So this is a good test. South Mainland's a good test. It's not millions of dollars. It's hundreds of thousands of dollars to protect our city.
Yeah.
So I would ask my colleagues, you got problem areas, you always got my support.
Okay.
So Mike's question was a policy, something, a procedure, streamline it. So I agree with that, but I got to tell you that my experience with the stop sign on Faulkner, I felt went really, really well. They contacted me. I said, we have a policy, we have a procedure. That is going to be number one. You've got to get the signatures. First, they wanted a lot more. And I was able to talk them back off that a little bit and say, look, let's take baby steps. Then they wanted 2 stop signs next to each other. And I said, no, why don't we start with 1? But what they had already done, or what I would have told them is go out, and you first have to get the support from the street. That's a policy. We have a 75% threshold. They got in the 90s. I worked with city manager. I worked with the police chief. We did some studies. We went through the process, and it worked pretty well. The problem is going to be when it doesn't meet that threshold. The question is, what policy do we want? Because if it doesn't meet the threshold, are we just going to look at people and say, oh, too bad, you don't get it? But we need to have some kind of policy that we can try to stick by. I think that's important. I don't want to see the neighborhood council necessarily involved, and here's why. I think it's a great idea, but there's already so much policy that goes on with it. People feel like they're not being listed, it's bureaucratic to them. So I did as much upfront work as I could do. I told them how it was going to work, how this was going to go down. And I said, oh, by the way, they started this before the holidays. And I said, I want you to understand something. There's not a single thing that's going to happen between now and the middle of January. Everyone's too busy. So the experience was positive. I brought it here, the petition, they met the criteria, you approved it. So it went overall pretty well. I just think that when we don't meet the threshold, the Rick Tresher got a hold of me. I think he's the guy who's talking to you on Peninsula. I was talking to him at an event that I saw him. He wants it there. I'm getting a lot of calls.
We set a standard with Magnolia.
Yes. So my concern is that we do have to have a policy and a threshold. And then the tough ones are going to be when we don't meet that and people get mad and then they come in and fill the chambers. So we understand that. So I agree with you that we need the policy in place. Not saying we can't ever deviate from it, but let's make sure it's our job to make sure that our constituents follow a policy so we don't bring in a giant disaster. At least we try to. Doesn't mean we're going to be able to stop them, but the point is take them through a process. That's why we have zones.
Just respond to that. I agree completely. And that threshold that we established does not have to be a high threshold. But they came in on their street, but it doesn't necessarily address what the adjoining streets, what effect it will have on them. So we just have to look at that a little bit more. Set a policy,
So I didn't have that problem with Faulkner,
Right.
but Jake had that with Magnolia, kicked it over to Live Oak, and we were concerned about that. So,
I-
to this.
I have another one, that's Cooper. They're constantly on Cooper, and that's the same type of neighborhood situation.
That's where we put in median islands, isn't it?
You know, put a little of those things in, yes.
Didn't work.
The other end.
They're nice.
Question, Commissioner McGurk, did you have calls of opposition to the stop sign?
Yes. Matter of fact,
Wow.
I don't want to get into it.
Okay.
Let's get,
Right.
yes, I did.
Okay.
You're good too.
Wait.
Faulkner one, or which?
To which stop sign? I thought you meant
Faulkner.
your, oh no,
Faulkner.
I'm glad you clarified that, Mayor. No, I had absolutely no one in opposition of it.
I've gotten a few on the Live Oak one. I've gotten a few emails. And I think we all copied. I don't know.
So,
They've got over 84%.
Yeah, so yeah, you're gonna have one or two.
Right.
Yeah. Commissioner Harmon.
So we had a traffic calming manual before us, and we voted not to take any action because they were beating us up with it. So I think we need to take another look at that, probably make some revisions to that, and come up with something that we all can live with. Now, I'm a fan of using the neighborhood council to be the first voice going, if you want something on your street, here's the manual, or here's what we know about it, here's what's worked in other neighborhoods, get started, come back to, and take it, we can take it directly to the council. But there needs to be at least 75% of the people buy in on this. I wouldn't even be opposed to somebody paying for the first traffic study, whether it's a $10 fee or something, so that they got some skin in this game. That's going to stop people from every street down the road. If I have 10 people on my street, I could get 100%. What's it going to cost me? Nothing. PD's going to go out there and do traffic studies, and it's going to come before us. If we look at that, we charge for garage sales. Why can't we charge for a traffic study? Then we have raw data. I know somebody here likes lots of raw data. I'm a big fan of raw data, because then we can go, all right, here's the true data. It really doesn't support what our traffic manual says, but let's talk about it. We can certainly make exceptions, and if it doesn't fit the model, then we can take the appropriate action. But we have to have a book, a set of rules. We need something that says, here's where we're going to start. This is what starts the whole process.
Okay.
I'll just add, I kind of threw the neighborhood council in there solely to say that we need a procedure as to how they should work on. I didn't mean to, and I obviously implied that traffic should go before neighborhood council, and I don't. Okay?
Let them get beat up.
Right, but
I agree completely with everything you said.
Right, but if they get an inquiry, they go, "What? There's a manual out there. Go
Yes.
find the manual online. There's the manual. There's the process that everybody else has used, step by step, and then go for it." So.
Gentlemen, you mentioned the neighborhood council. I would love for them to engage. It's like a vetting, a clearinghouse, a jury of peers, although we are their peers as well. We just have a title. But it's good, but it was too late for the neighborhood council to get involved in Magnolia. The people had been fighting for this for 3.5 years. Yes, sure, why not? If people want to engage with the neighborhood council and they can help somehow, I'm all for that. But in the Magnolia case and then the Live Oak again, they were already out collecting petitions. I don't know if they would have been in favor to go back. It seems like going backwards from where they were. But I support neighborhood council getting involved somehow.
So my thoughts on this, couple of things. Number one is I think these are the type of issues that where in theory, every commissioner has a zone, and most of the items, when it comes to voting, everyone votes. But these are great cases where the zone commissioner can really help facilitate this process and be the voice of that community and help that community, through this process, and by virtue, help the commission through the process. And I have to say that the Faulkner one that came before us, You know, I mean, you and I hadn't talked about that. The first thing I did was sit down and I get all this data that's here, and you know, we didn't have, the chamber wasn't full. We didn't have 52 public meetings. It was just, hey, this is the right thing to do, and you know, that worked. So I think there's opportunity there for, you know, however we get there. And I was a fan of the traffic calming manual. I liked having, not that we couldn't ever override it, but I liked having that as a starting point that at least gives us something to fall back on and say, this is the recommendation. Because you mentioned earlier, Commissioner Sachs, that we follow all this data and best practices, but the reality is we're kind of not. We're kind of going with, Billy wants a stop sign right there. He thinks that's going to solve the problem, and there's no expert involved in that process. We get to then arbitrate that and decide whether or not that's going to work. And, you know, there's a lot of science around stop signs, and that they don't solve all the problems. They cause other problems. So anyway, so I support the traffic calming manual of some type. If we need to tweak it, we can tweak it. I think too much work went in to let it just completely go away. But then however that lands, I think this is an area for the zone commissioner to really step up and help facilitate that process and help be the leader, and help it not get to the commission in a you know, either too prematurely when it's just one or two people and then it kind of blows up as we saw a little bit with Magnolia, or you know, I don't know. I think there's opportunity there. And then on neighborhood council, I want to involve neighborhood council in many things. I think there's a lot of opportunities for that. This one, though, these kind of things, it's same with staff. I try very hard to keep staff out of the middle of politics. I mean, they're you know, in political positions to some degree, but if there's going to be political darts thrown on stuff and it's going to come down to politics, I don't want to get our volunteer advisory committees in that. So I don't want them to be forced to have to make a, you know, kind of getting in the middle of what could be messy. I mean, imagine being a neighborhood council member at one of those Magnolia meetings and feeling like all the Magnolia folks were, you know, and then let's say they approve it and then we don't, and now all of a sudden it's, you know, well, now you're not even listening to your own neighborhood council. It kind of puts more, I don't know, I don't go with that so much in this particular case. I want to look for opportunities to involve our advisory committees. I've said that multiple times. You know, go across the board. I haven't heard. I mean, I don't want to throw barbs at anybody, but you know, I'll pose it as a question. What's the last advice we got from our economic advisory board? What's the last advice we got from? I mean, go down the list of those and find me the emails where they're emailing us advice. These are advisory commissions and councils. Find me the advice we're getting. Yeah, so that's a different debate, different topic that I won't get into. So, Vice Mayor Colodi, you were up next with your next item. As long as it's not traffic calming, we already cleared that off the list.
And neighborhood council cleared that off also.
No.
The last thing I think we should talk about, because it is a little time restricted, DOT is going to come out with their latest plan for the Pioneer Trail intersection, interchange. Do we want to take a position on it? You know, there's going to be a public hearing that I'm not going to be in town for, but there's a comment period that comes in after it. So perhaps when we digest that information, we should look to say something. It appears now that they're going to have connections to go eastbound, which they said they weren't going to have originally, which is going to load up Pioneer Trail and Turnbull Trail. So, and this is the question is whether we want to take a position.
And if I may, before we go into this specific one, I think there's probably a broader question I'd love to maybe debate as well. Is you know, when we speak even individually on an item like this, let's say you are in town and you show up for it, and let's say we've decided collectively we're not going to take a position, which is the question we're about to answer. But then if I show up even individually and then say, I'm just here as a citizen of New Smyrna, I'm not. I have the title, and the title carries the weight. And so I think that's something I don't know, I just try to be really careful about that, and if the commission hasn't reached a consensus, I mean, you can ask Howard, I've been at many of our meetings with the mayor's roundtable, and I've backed off, and I'll say, look, I can't speak about this, because my commission hasn't taken a position on it yet. I've got to go ask them so I can give you the opinion, and I don't even have my own opinion. So I think we have to be careful, because items like this can get very contentious. It can get you got multiple agencies involved, federal, state, local partners, et cetera, so I think that's something else I just wanted to throw that out there as we think through it.
Yes, so ironically, I just happen to have a ridiculous amount of information about Pioneer Trail because it started when I was a citizen on the Citizens Advisory Committee back in 2006-ish. So we do have a position. The city's position is that we're going to support the interchange. But let me give you some history on this, how we got to where we got. I'm going to make this as quick as I possibly can. The Pioneer Trail interchange blew up at some point, became an issue during the somewhere around 2005, 6, 7-ish. There's a lot of people in the community who didn't want to support it. At the TPO is where it was on the long-range transportation plan. The city took the position due to public opposition to try to remove it from the long-range transportation plan. The city succeeded. So I'm here to tell you they thought they did, and I'm going to tell you what really happened. Thought they did, and I'm going to tell you what really happened. Maury saw the economic collapse, and then he pulled it. So go ahead, pull it off. I won't be doing this for 10, 12 years. So everybody in New Smyrna said, yeah, we won, we fought it and won. No, they didn't. Fast forward about 6 months after I get elected, I get a phone, my phone starts blowing up. Oh my God, Pioneer Trail Interchange. They're trying to put it back on the long-range transportation plan. And it was in the newspaper. The county and Port Orange sent a resolution to the TPO to put it back on. Why? Because Woodhaven was going to start. And I had to so I saw what was happening. And then people said, well, how come we didn't know about this? The reason we didn't know about it is because they didn't care to tell us. They didn't care to tell us because we took the position we do not support the interchange. Ironically, that doesn't matter to them. So I saw that we didn't even get called. So we don't even have a seat at the table. And that is a bad position to be in. And they don't need us. So I went, spoke a lot to Sugar Mill, told them the pros and the cons. I got the Sugar Mill board at the time to see what I was saying and that it's going to come. This interchange has been talked about for 40 years. Had different routes all through Fairgreen at one point. So fast forward, we didn't know about it because of our position. So I got the city commission to change the position so we can have a seat at the table and start getting what we want out of it. I was also told that from a former planner, we took the position, we supported it, then we didn't support it. However, we used the interchange in the transportation element to approve all that building out west. So the irony of what we did is exactly what everyone says they hate about the traffic in the community. We used it as justification to permit these homes, and then when public opposition got mad about the interchange, we took it off. Well, that was a political move just to look good, because the bottom line is that interchange is going to come, and we have very little to do about it. And on the TPO, New Smyrna's vote is 4.2%. So there's really no support. There's no true leverage that we have. So our official position is that we support it. I do not see the opposition for the Pioneer Trail interchange that used to be there because of the traffic problems and because of the development that we've created out west. There's some people out in Pioneer Trail that don't like it. You talked about a lane. A rumor that got started, and if someone told you, if you went and someone with FDOT or any of these consultants told you that that was not going to be a fully functioning interchange, that was very wrong, because I heard these things popping up, and as I've never been told that, and I confirmed it through the TPO and the FDOT, and I would love to track down the person who may have told you that and some other people, but this is gonna be a fully functioning interchange. It's in the PD and E section right now. We're gonna have 2 public meetings. We insisted on Deb Denny's and I insisted on them being down here, so there was as much transparency as possible. They wanted to have it up in Daytona as one of the meetings. We said, no, we're gonna have it here down in New Smyrna. So that is some of the history of the Pioneer Trail interchange. And we can't take it away. Now, ironically, here's the biggest complaint we have is roads have to fail before they get looked at and funded, which takes another 10 or 15, 20 years down the road. The irony of the Pioneer Trail interchange is, due to Maury's power, he's going to get that interchange before it is probably technically needed, which is what everybody claims that they want. You plan the growth, but you don't plan the roads. Well, we planned the growth. They did it on Port Orange side. We did it in New Smyrna side. And that's the interchange is going to come before it's actually gridlocked and failing. So the irony of that interchange is we're getting it before the road fails.
I don't necessarily object to the interchange.
Yeah.
I do remember going out to Sugar Mill and seeing in their plans that they did have one of the options that did not have eastward connections. That was a possibility. Now they're going to, which I kind of figured would come along anyhow. But you go back to the old gas sales tax increase, proposed improvements to Pioneer Trail. Maybe we should ask for the state to fund some of that. That's the type of thing that I would like to bring up.
Yeah.
We're not going to stop it's just not going to happen.
Well, yeah, and I just want to point out, because you said the position, that is, there's a history there with the position. And I certainly recommend, it does us no good by opposing it. It's going to come, and they either put us at the table. We got a pedestrian overpass to link up the trails was really the big issue that the people wanted in this community, and we were able to get that. But they didn't even bother to let us know these resolutions went to the TPOs to put it back on the LRTP. So we're in a really bad position.
I appreciate the background.
And I'd like to weigh in. Sure. I also sat on the TPO CAC, if you recall, Commissioner, and I strongly objected. We didn't have the road network outside of the exchange to support it. I also knew that some people would favor it to break up a little bit of gridlock, but eventually it would become an avenue towards more growth, towards urban sprawl. And it is amazing how one powerful person can get an interchange on an interstate highway. It just is amazing. But he's going to get it, and we're going to have to eat it. And for a while it's going to relieve some congestion, maybe. But again, it's going to contribute to that growth that I'm so concerned that we cannot sustain. And then we'll have Williamson Boulevard. I think I remember at one time it was Pioneer Trail Exchange or Williamson Boulevard. Guess what? We get both. So we're going to see massive growth out there. I don't know what it's going to look like. I know you support it.
We see the growth. I don't support or not support the interchange. We have the growth out there. It's not that the interchange is going to create it. But the interchange, we used back in, 2005, back then, we were using the interchange as a justification for our growth out west. So the growth is coming whether the interchange comes or not. Woodhaven is built. It's building right now. So, I don't want to, I want it clear that the interchange is not creating development. The development is there and it's building. It's called Venetian Bay. It's called it's called Coastal Woods. It's called Woodhaven. Those have already started.
No, and more. And I recall when you said, reasonably so, that we needed a seat at the table. I still don't support it. It will come. But then again, just a question. Did the city did we actually we were colleagues on the last commission, did we actually take a position and support it?
Position was last taken, I believe, in 2013.
As a vote of the body?
Yes.
Okay. Well, it's coming, folks. Thanks.
Comments, questions?
So our position should be, they need to put the adaptive signals on 44 and fix Mission first. Period. You know, those have been promised for a long time. They're going through the whole process, but those are both, seems like they're never going to get here. Yet we were promised these when I first got elected, especially the signals. We are going to be right after ISB, and then they pushed us back. You know, we did all the work with the Mission Road, Mission Wallace intersection, and nothing's happened with that. So those things we need now to fix the problems we have now, because the interchange's coming whether we want it or not. And they're even talking about changing the interchange at 44 and 95. I mean, that's the next one they're looking at.
That we need.
Not until we fix the traffic coming down 44.
No, agreed.
So
But that's a dangerous intersection.
That's what we need to be pushing with FDOT is they need to get off the, you know, the fence on these other issues. That was tough. They need to get off the fence on these other two areas and give us some relief on 44.
Okay. So, yeah, I've said many times, hang on, let me comment on this and then I'll come back to you. I've said many times, there's a lot of things that we are out of our direct control, but we can try to influence. And so I think when you hear some talk about having that seat at the table, the notion is, and we've done this, and you know, Vice Mayor Colodi, I think he's probably the best at it. It took me a while to get used to it, but there's times when he'll sit over there and we'll have something in front of us and he'll be working on helping to make it better. And then I'll you know, say something about supporting it, and he said, like, oh, I don't support it, I'm gonna vote no on it. But if we do it, I want it to be this way. And I think that's kind of the spot we find ourselves in collectively sometimes, is some of these things we can try to influence, and we may not support it, but if it's gonna happen, if it's beyond our direct control, if we only have 4% of the vote, we can try to scream as loud as we want with that 4%. But the reality is there's more powerful people than us, and how that comes about, and that whole debate about, you know, politics and power in America is that's an over drinks after hours debate. But you know, we are where we are, and so I think that notion of having a seat at the table is using Vice Mayor Colodi's strategy is there anything else we can, you know, if this is happening and there's kind of no point in fighting it, can we, and I want to be clear, citizens can fight it, because you know, other people that do have power work for the same citizens we work for. So I'm not saying citizens should roll over. I'm saying as a city, you know, I think our position is how can we leverage this, or can we point out other things like Commissioner Hartman has to say, you know, hey, if you're going to do that, while you're at it, can you at least do this first, because this is pennies and this is millions. And so anyway, do you have last comments on that, Vice Mayor? Ready to move on to one other?
Well, my question was, are we going to take a position? I assume now, from what I hear, we will take a position after we see what's going to be offered to us in a public meeting, and that we're going to be reasonable and assume that it's coming. So perhaps we can get our foot in the door for any other type of improvements that might go with it.
Yeah. I think on some of these issues, sometimes the you know, there's also a concept about, you know, putting pearls before swine. Like, I don't think that some of these, I try to stay in our little lane in New Smyrna Beach and try to influence what we can. So, anyway, all right. You were up next. We got about 30 minutes left, so we got to cruise through these last.
All right, gentlemen, I'll try again to be brief. It's all about water. Water everywhere. Poor Lisa got flooded during one of our big storms. Water came over the seawall. Water came up through the storm drains, most likely. We have to have a plan. We have to develop a plan to put in backflow preventers almost everywhere we can to keep our city from flooding. These are inexpensive ways to get a leg up on global sea rise. We know it's happening. Just look at our beach. So that's part of what I wanted to discuss about water. And then the baffle box. Dr. Ann Shortell from the Water Management District gave a presentation, and in that presentation was a baffle box. It's 2 concrete boxes that collect sediment, debris, that keep our water clean. The water that goes out to our beautiful estuary, our Indian River. We need to make developers and ourselves at our major outfalls use baffle boxes. They're not tremendously expensive. They're not cheap, but they're necessities to save our economy, our lifestyle, our quality of life, everything that we need to thrive. So I would push staff to start talking about baffle boxes and backflow preventers. These are simple hardware things that are going to give us a leg up while we continue to talk about global sea rise. So again, I brought it up maybe 10 times until we vote on it and have a plan to do it. It may be too late for large parcels like Beacon Apartments, like the car lots over on 44. I don't know where their water's going and how dirty or clean it is, but those are the kind of projects we need to have baffle boxes on. And over on Beachside and some areas, I think there's 1 backflow preventer or 2 over in Islesboro. I think Kyle had mentioned that, hopefully.
Commissioner Sachs, I think we agree with you. The difference in the new system that they installed, it's quite different than what was installed 20 years ago in terms of the water quality and quantity. So the treatment that they're getting, it's way much better than what happened in 20 years ago. We have used baffle boxes. We have used the CDX units right there at Wayne and Faulkner. We have used baffle boxes at the Brannan Center. The check valves, by the way, on the beach side, there is 6 or 7 of them, I think. There's 1, I think we installed all of them except 1. So, and then the commission made the decision to upgrade the stormwater system to Class 2. So that's another step forward that we have done. So baffle boxes, sometimes if it's not maintained properly, sometimes it does hurt more than help.
So let me be clear what I think I just heard, and because I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth. So I haven't heard, you're right, you brought this up a few times. I've never heard the commission disagree with this. And it's not even, the backflow preventers maybe, but the baffle boxes, especially on new development, it's not a cost we're bearing. It's a construction standard we're holding to. So I don't think we're going to have a lot of pushback. So are we doing anything now, or have we not done anything, or have we just not had a new project come up since we started raising this alarm, or what's the?
I think what we'll do is we'll have staff look at it, and then probably we'll come back to you with some recommendation.
As a commission, we approved $250,000 for small drainage projects, and they may very well include a lot of these enhancements in it.
Backflow, yeah. Okay. Other comments on this? Sorry, I should have gone the right
Baffle
order.
boxes do have maintenance costs.
Yeah, I can see that, because that sediment would build up there, so, yeah.
Yeah, Mayor, I agree with what you just said. I mean, I really don't have anything to add. It's not that I don't want it, and I think, again, an unintended consequence. What are they? How do they best function? Who's going to maintain it? We have a fight going on right now in Isles of Sugar Mill, where there's a resident that doesn't want to pay for them to clean out their water because it comes from somewhere else. So, and the whole design of this flow is it starts way out west and eventually works its way all the way to the river. So it goes through lots of different developments. Well, we got one person right in the middle who says, I shouldn't be responsible for this. So I just don't, so anyway, I agree with the mayor. Let me ask you a quick question. The baffle box, where exactly does it go on a development? Is it interior, or do you put it on a pipe that goes out to the river?
Good question. I believe it's near the outfall where it goes out to the river.
Okay, so it's kind of like it's a version of one of the goats. Not exactly the same thing, but it treats the water before it goes in.
It's a chamber that has quite a bit of compartment that it does do the cleaning. It would separate the trash from going out.
Yeah.
And it does do some treatment as well.
So do you put them on a new development, or do you or would we be retrofitting them on all the, so Riverside?
outfalls,
Yeah, the outfall.
You could do it both. You could do it on an outfall that an existing outfall, or you could do it in a,
So if we had required it for, let's just take beacons going up right now, if we just stopped construction today and said these have to be there, is it something they're putting in out there or not?
No, the newer development, as Colin mentioned, already has a very high standard, so you're getting very little incremental benefit from adding a baffle box there. You get a huge benefit from going into the older areas that didn't have any stormwater treatment. It's going to basically raw discharge going straight to the
So
creek.
you got Wayne Avenue that turns into Riverside, goes straight out. You got an outfall right there. I fished that little pipe when I was a kid.
it's a 16-inch pipe, by the way.
Right. So theory, that's what you would attach it onto.
And there is that's what I'm saying. We put one at Wayne and Faulkner. And there's a couple down on South Riverside.
Baffle boxes.
So you put one at Wayne and Faulkner,
Uh-huh. Right
where
there.
it turns into Riverside?
Uh-huh. Right there at Wayne,
Right.
Wayne and Faulkner.
Oh, really?
And it's a different, it's not the baffle box, the concrete. It's actually a unit. That it's a pre-made that we put it there.
Storm scepter.
At some point,
Okay.
we have done quite a bit on the improvement on the discharge.
Do you have any comments on this?
So I will be brief, because when I Googled baffle boxes, it had to do with quilting. So,
I'm baffled.
so like the first 10 things all dealt with how you make stuffing for quilts. So
Okay.
it was enlightening.
Yeah. So I think on this one, again, I agree. You've brought it up a few times. I think you've heard today there's some confusion. We're off into quilting even. So I think it's probably a worthy discussion of what exactly is, what are we doing? Like, let's make sure we're taking credit for what we've already accomplished and we are doing. Because if staff has heard us and they're working on it, maybe we just haven't done a good job of making sure we all understand that. And then if there's opportunities that we can do more, I think we've got support. Again, especially if it's out of the ground construction is the easiest, cheapest place to start these changes. What I'm hearing is we may not get a lot of benefit from that, but if there's any benefit, we should probably do it, because again, it's the easiest way to do it. And then to Commissioner or Vice Mayor's point, we've got some funding, maybe we can even tackle a few more and have a plan for that, so.
I applaud staff for what they've done. I think and believe we need to do more.
Okay?
Okay, I'm going to be very brief with this issue. This is, I kind of been pushing. The idea is we can't fix 44. It's always going to be congested. It's going to get worse. I want to develop a network of local roads for us locals to move around on. So really all I'm talking about are a lot of these little intersections where you need turn lane improvements. Very small, very easy, not big deals. Example, North Causeway going into Peninsula needs a right turn lane. Halleck at Wayne, everybody from the north side of town uses that. Someone wants to turn left where Halleck goes into Wayne, it backs up 10, 15 cars deep because there's a lot of traffic coming down Wayne to get out to 44. So this has always been a little cut through for local roads in the north side of town. But as our population increases, now they're congested. So a simple little turn lane that allows the cars, we don't even need it, you can move the stop sign and people can go around it. So Colony Park Road, all I have to do is mention that to anybody in the city, and they're like, oh my God, that is amazing. What a fantastic road. It was under everybody's radar. We put that in, no one knew where it was, okay. Now, I use that as an example of what I'm talking about by little tweaks here and there to help the quality of life and the level of service of our local transportation network. And people get it. So what I would like to do is have everybody in their district. We can't be pie in the sky. Give us 2, maybe 3 little spots where a turn lane on a certain intersection will make a huge difference. And let's identify whether or not we have the funding, how much it would be, and start working on these. It's not can't do it tomorrow, but I think that would be a great addition to working towards that little network of roads. Peninsula and North Causeway will be a big deal, but we need to be ready because when the flower place went out of business, I don't know what happened with the property. The business it was closing down. Someone may be picking it up again. But we need to be ready to act. So, but my point is, but we need the funding secured. We can't just say, oh, we got a great idea and we got someone who wants to sell. Where are we gonna get $1 million for a piece of property? And then, so my point is, let's have something identified, and each district commissioner can come up with just 2 or 3. Start that process, and the mayor, I guess we can give you a little, you get 2 or 3 all over the city.
All right. Comments on this item?
I like the idea. I think one source of funding may be to take some of these surplus properties that we have out throughout the city, these little lots here and there, and maybe put them on the market. If we're going to have a real estate company representing us, maybe we should get rid of some of our excess pieces that we have out there, because we have quite a few on the tax roll. Not on tax roll, but we own lots that we bought or purchased and maybe have no future use for them. Maybe now would be the good time to start liquidating some of those assets.
Okay.
Fully supported.
Okay. Commissioner Sachs, comments?
Oh, I have none. I'm in support of most everything you guys are talking about here. These are major improvements for our city.
So my only comment on that is linking back to the discussion we just had about Live Oak, Magnolia, all these other areas, where there, and this is personal to me because some of this discussion about this local road network is in my neck of the woods. And I don't want to introduce new cut-throughs, because those aren't only used by locals. And I can tell you, I sit on my front porch every Saturday morning, and without looking at a map, without ever leaving my front porch, I can tell you when the traffic backs up to Corbin Park Road and to Hidden Pines Boulevard, because I see cars start flying down my road. And I say flying, literally flying, down my road, and they start flying down my road. And I say flying, literally flying, down my road, and they get there, and then they turn right, try to go right on a dead end, and then try to go left. So what I don't want to do is, I agree with you, a turn lane here and there, maybe a little cut through here and there in an unpopulated area, but I don't want to start going into existing neighborhoods that are built around a climate and environment that's already existing, that's what they purchased into and have lived in for years. And all of a sudden now we connect that in such a way that, yeah, we just introduced a drag strip through your front yard or through your backyard. And we've facilitated more growth. We had this discussion about the Turnbull interchange. Does asphalt create new development? I'll tell you, on Page Avenue, I've already had realtors from Orlando call me. They say, hey, I heard the bridge is going to be built, Page Avenue is going to be connected, and there's a bunch of acres back there, and I just want to know what, I'm really interested in wanting to work on that. I've literally had this phone call. I'm like, you don't know how bad of a mistake you just made. You called the absolute wrong person in this entire city to have that discussion. So, but that's the reality. That's the other fear is, as you make, if we open up new areas, and I think it's still susceptible to some degree on Colony Park Road, if you put 300 or 400 homes on each side of Colony Park Road, all the way between that and back there, Pioneer, then all of a sudden Colony Park Road becomes another parking lot trying to get in and out. So I support it to the degree that it's things that are truly, hey, it makes a lot of sense to have a right or left turn lane here, or we could connect these few areas and it doesn't introduce a lot of new cut-through traffic. Because the locals, there's already a lot of local, I don't sit in traffic on 44. I duck over to Jungle and go there, and that cut-through's been there for 100 years. Nobody knows it. Nobody that lives on Jungle knows that their road's a cut-through. But I don't want to create new cut-through traffic, because with the days of with GPS, there are no local roads anymore. I mean, when I travel in these towns, if I hit a traffic backs up, my GPS immediately starts rerouting me, and you end up in somebody's neighborhood. And I think about it every time, like, this person now has interstate traffic in their neighborhood. Like, that's terrible. That used to not happen before the days of GPS. So that's my only concern with that. That's where I'll push back, but I love the idea of, there's some things where I'm sitting at red lights and I'm like, man, if I could there was just a lane right there, this whole thing would flow a lot better. So,
Mr. Mayor,
love that idea. Yes.
Please oblige me. The east-west connector, which we may be discussing,
Tuesday night.
Yeah, I'm concerned there because it may get contentious even on the dais. To relieve traffic on 44, we are considering making another corridor somewhere else, which may totally change the character of those neighborhoods. We already see it on the historic west side, on Washington and Mary, and and so forth. So to see Page, we've talked about Page before.
Yeah.
And, this may someday have to become a connector. I don't support it, but I don't know how when our city grows, how it grows, are we going to change our?
And I don't want to take this to one specific street. I mean, I know I brought that one up as it's an example that's near and dear to me, but
No, I
again,
know.
like the others, I don't want to start talking specific intersections. I love the concept, and we'll talk the list for this year at Tuesday night. But go ahead and respond.
Yeah, well, hold on, the
Just
east-west,
report on that.
what's happening with the east-west connector on Tuesday night? I'm not.
So that the TPO project list is going forward, and that's that 3.5 million for the East-West connector, which I
We
haven't
brought up at the last meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We got to approve. It's on the agenda for
Okay,
this
got it.
this coming Tuesday.
So you said, I don't want to mince words, but you said something interesting. You said the east-west connector to alleviate traffic on 44. That is absolutely the exact opposite of that road. The reason 44 gets backed up, not because people are trying to go to Edgewater, not because people are trying to go to US 1, they're trying to go to the beach.
Right.
So this east-west connector will allow the people who live in New Smyrna and Edgewater to be able, on the south side of 44, to go from US 1 over towards the hospital. Now, it's a theory. It's a 20-year plan. This thing is more of a pipe dream, but I don't want that misinterpreted. It is not to alleviate traffic on 44. It is to give local people options on roads so they don't have to get on 44. So aside from the fact that we have 15,000 people who come on 44 to try to get to our beach, anybody who lives on the south side of 44 can't do anything unless they go to 44. And everybody on the north side of 44 can't get anywhere or do any shopping unless they go to 44. So we have this massive convergence on 44 to get places, mixed in with all the people coming in. So my intention of the east-west connector is for a local road. Now, that doesn't mean that we need to discuss or don't need to discuss the issue of how do we make sure this does not become a road where people on 44 then peel off. And when Waze was created, one of the ways, technology is great until the problem was people in quiet residential neighborhoods had people, and this was a big problem in LA. People's neighborhoods were ruined. They had to put up all kinds of stop signs and block roads because Waze showed you how to get around it.
Yep.
But let me be clear, and then I know we're stressed for time here. The fundamental problem with our traffic is thousands of people coming in from west to get to our beach. These people are not peeling off to go out Mission Road way out far. Where you live, yes, that is an issue if people try to get around. So we have a little bit of leeway because we're not creating a local road network to get you from Walmart to the beach. We're creating a way to get you from Walmart to the north side of town near the airport. And if you come, so I just want to make clear the intent of that. And it may be just a total pipe dream when you actually look at the routes and what land you would have to buy and all that kind of stuff.
So I think I solved half our traffic problems 2 Sundays ago. Stood down at the beach ramp on Flagler after waiting in a line of traffic for a long time. Parked, got out, stood there and watched. There were 4 toll booth attendants monitoring 1 lane of traffic going in. And there's an empty lane over, everybody's going on. I mean, I didn't see, I stood there for 30 minutes or 45 minutes, I didn't see a single car pull off. And that lane's just sitting there empty. And you have 4 people, and they're queued up trying to pre-stage and all this stuff. But ultimately, there's one, it's a bottleneck. And, so I don't know who to talk to, but there's a much better way to do that. You could have somebody down here that's basically like a flag person saying, hey, these are 2 lanes on, and if somebody needs to come off, we flag traffic, we stop it. And so you do 2 lanes on during prime time, and you reverse that coming off with the flag person, and then you could get twice the people on, you create a fast lane. I mean, there's way more efficient ways to operate this. I don't think we've applied enough brain power to that.
In my opinion, and Claudia's brought this up a lot, once the elections are passed, because we don't know who's sitting up there at the county, I think New Smyrna needs to sit down and figure out what's best for New Smyrna. And I'm not trying to steal Mike's thunder, but, at this point, we don't control the beach. We gave it to the county. We probably need to have some discussions next year about what can we work with the county on? At least not countywide, but citywide in our city.
Yeah, there's, I mean, again, I took everything in me to not walk over there and start making some changes, because I could have moved that traffic twice as fast as it was moving, just with a few subtle, same for staff, no increase in any expenses. So.
Right, but that discussion is gonna be civil, and it's
Yeah.
gonna be an open dialogue.
For sure.
It's not saying you're not doing this or doing that.
No, it's
But
just-
we do need that discussion of what's best for our
On the
community may not be
scale
best
of the
for.
things the county has to operate, those, nobody, nobody at the county level has time to go stand there, but I do, and that's my job, is to stand there and see that as an opportunity and then try to run it up the flagpole. But yeah, on the scale of what the county has to deal with, that's really, really minor.
Yes.
But it impacts my residents' quality of life pretty majorly, so. Commissioner Hartman, you're up. Anything?
I've got all mine done, but I want to hear about better engagement with public using technology.
Okay.
Can you do that in 15 minutes, 10 minutes?
I can. I got two items, actually. I'm gonna link these two together and sneak both of them in. So as we think about, I mentioned this at the parking meeting, how do we, this concept, there's what, 1, 2, 3 members of the public here. We had the parking meeting. There was 100 members of the public there, maybe. We had State of the City, 300 members of the public. It was a well-attended event, less than, a fragment of the population. So I haven't seen this done yet, so I don't even, we have to talk through legalities, we have to talk through sunshine, we have to talk through a lot of things, but, even the town halls, I think we can pat ourselves on the back that we tried to do a lot last year to be more engaging. I mean, we certainly had a lot more meeting time. We did, every commissioner did a town hall in their zone. But if you look at that, if you peel off the people that were at every single one of them, you had maybe 20, 30 people at each of those. It's just hard to get the public engaged. This is not how the public works now. They're too plugged into these things. So how do we leverage that? How do we leverage that to better engage our public? So a couple of things I've been kicking around are, what if we did, I attend webinars all the time where you get 100, 200, 300 people in a webinar. You do Facebook Live. Like, could we leverage some technology to better engage? We're talking about what we want to do with the waterfront promenade. How can we do that? How can we leverage some technology to better engage our public? So a few ideas I've had are, instead of doing a town hall where we stand in front of a crowd, we do a virtual town hall. Now, you have, the difference is, there's a certain, if I can just be candid, there's a certain element of civility that comes with human interaction that is lost when folks get behind a keyboard. And I think we're all guilty of that to some degree, some a lot more than others. So you have to have some controls in place to keep conversations and civil and moving forward in that setting. But I'd love to see if the commission were okay with just, let's try it. It may be a colossal failure, but I think we have to be willing to try some of these things and be a city that steps out on a limb and is willing to say, yep, we tried it and it didn't work. But we at least are guilty of trying and not just continuing to do business the same old way. And then mass surveys. There's companies that do this. There's technology to do this. I would like to just see us trying to earmark some funding, trying to earmark some staff expertise to figure out ways where we can do more of these mass surveys of just our students. Change.org petitions are great. The huge downfall of them is they get forwarded around and it's hard to control. You can't tell who it actually is replying to it. So if we had a way to survey our citizens on topics, I'd like to see that. And that leads me to our website. One other thing I wanted to talk through, and then this will be my last thing, is you heard me talk about the state of the city. So we pulled a ton of items down, and because all this ADA stuff, what I'm seeing out there in the marketplace is you go to a lot of other cities and a lot of the items are back up, and their websites aren't like ours with a bunch of broken links. Staff tells me they have all the information. They pulled it down, and it's not like they deleted it. They just pulled it off the website so we didn't get in trouble. And so I think we need to have a conversation. We don't have to solve it today, but I think we need to have a conversation about, how comfortable is our city attorney? How comfortable are we with the fact that seems to be getting cracked down on? That weaponizing of that law seems to be getting cracked down on. I would like to see us defaulting towards getting information back out there, and if we run into legal trouble with that, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But I don't like this. I don't like putting staff and us in a position where there's people out there that feel like there's stuff they don't have access to that they should. None of us like that. Staff doesn't like it. The public certainly doesn't like it. And I think we could get away from it. And so all those are kind of layered into this whole notion of transparency. I reject this thing that we're not transparent. I challenge folks to find another city that has done as much in this past year towards transparency. Just the amount of meetings we've had, the amount of literally time for public to come and engage, things like this. Like no other cities are having these kind of meetings that I know of. Certainly my colleagues that I talk to, I don't hear about them talking about this. So I think we've done a lot. These are just the last few things I'd like to see us working on and trying. So that was what I was thinking about with that item, Commissioner Hartman. So. With that, we'll start this way, go that way. We got about 10 minutes, so.
Well, on that subject, I think we should bring back all the stuff that used to be there. Maybe, I don't want to pay to convert it all ADA, but if we can stick a disclaimer on the front, this particular thing is not ADA, you got to go to town hall. Can we do something like that? Thing is not ADA, you got to go to town hall. Can we do something like that?
Contact us for the ADA compliant version. That's what, it seems like a simple thing. I know it's probably not that simple, and if you're not ready to speak to it now, we can punt it, but.
Well, Kelly and I have been talking about, you know, the standard hasn't changed even though that threat has gone away. So I do think we should aspire to the gold standard moving forward, that everything we post is compliant.
And everything we're posting now is, right? We're producing ADA compliant moving forward. The problem is we got this treasure trove, thousands of pages to try to convert, which is going to cost a mint.
So my thought was we create a separate web page with a big disclaimer at the top that says, you know, if you need assistance accessing any of these documents, please contact the clerk's office. It's not perfect. It's not foolproof, but at least start getting, and the other thing that Kelly and I have talked about is we probably need to limit the scope of how far we go back to put on that page. So whether it's 5 years, I think is what Kelly mentioned, you know, but I think that's probably a nice middle ground, and then we can see how that goes and see if anything comes our way.
So those items that would be from when we first became ADA compliant, going back 5 or 6 years, would not get converted.
You just stick them up with a big thing that says if you need assistance reading this or hearing this or
whatever,
you know, please contact the clerk's office.
I'm fully for that.
Okay. Mr. Sachs, comments, questions?
Well, you know, we certainly do, I do, look at Nextdoor. Some of us reply on social media. Some use it as a tool to get out to their constituents. But I do know there's a lot of people who are not IT educated. And if we can find any other tools to get out to the public, I particularly would love to have access to all of Nextdoor for the city. And I've heard other people complain about that too. I can only view Beachside.
I think that's how that platform
and Sun
works.
General. It is. It's a strange platform, but if that's how it is, so be it. But then again, I'm not the most IT fluent myself, so just getting permits like to park your truck and trailer, people have had difficulty with that, getting, you know, unless they can go to PD or they can go to Babe James to get those, you know, get their licenses renewed and everything. That seems to be a difficulty. As much as I would like us to retain our records for 20 years, if we're not legally obliged to do that, 5 years, I guess, is all right.
Well, to be clear, we're retaining them all within what we're supposed to do. I mean, we're not violating any records retention laws.
No,
In fact, we've
that's
probably
correct.
been doing
That's
it
two
above
different-
and beyond.
Two different issues. We're retaining them on the backside, per the Florida State
Yeah.
Records Retention Guidelines. However, what you post online under retention is what will be online. It's completely different.
Yeah.
So like budget books, for example, we can go ahead and post those. There's a retention for them, but instead of going back 20 years or whatever was on the old website, just limit it to 5. That seems to be the standard.
Yeah.
So just to summate, I think we are trying to be more accessible, more compliant with transparency, accessibility. It is a difficult process getting us there. We're always going to have our naysayers, but if I continue to see that accessibility, like you have finally helped us get there. I know you're an IT guy a bit, so.
I haven't done it, staff's done
I
everything.
know,
haven't done
I know,
anything.
but did not seem to have the political will back then. Maybe we were old and stodgy, and I'm old and stodgy as well, so, but we're
Yeah.
getting there, and I appreciate that.
And Grant,
from
there was,
staff.
I mean, this isn't replacing, I mean, the virtual town hall won't replace, and we can still have regular town halls. I'm just trying to say, hey, could we get 300 or 400 people to engage in this? Or the beauty of these things too is that they can do it at their leisure. So they can go back and watch this. They can be recorded. They go back and see what was asked, and, you can pick up some other benefits. So Commissioner McGurk, comments on this?
With respect to the ADA issue, I have no problem letting the city attorney test boundaries. We use some common sense with that, and, if we're trying on the side of transparency to get information out, and somehow, unfortunately, we get a little suit on us, we'll deal with it at that time. So I have no problem testing some boundaries, although it's up to this commission to accept responsibility when it hits the fan. Virtual town halls and all that, that's great. To me, it's a cost to benefit. How many people, we set this up, it was a great test. It doesn't always work well, but more importantly, how many people are actually watching? You've done a tremendous amount since you came in to focus on technology and allowing people to, the transparency of getting the meetings out. And I see a relatively, I could be wrong, but I don't think there's a whole lot of people on it.
It's low numbers, yeah.
So, and that's consistent with what my experience on the commission has been. People don't, until it personally affects them, usually on second reading, that's when they get involved. And I don't know if the technology has proven that helps it, due to the low numbers on our commission meetings and these things. So, within reason, I'm certainly willing to try to venture out and use technology to get more people to listen.
Yeah, we got 10 people watching right now. We get 52 views on the last thing. So yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I mean, when you start doing the math, you say how much we're spending to get those 10 views or those 50 views that eventually accumulate.
What's your ROI?
I hear you. Trust me.
We have to recognize, though, that system goes down a lot. So we hope.
So the system, I've talked to the guy that does, the system is actually pretty stable. We've had some internet connection issues. I mean, one of them was every business in the area was out. I tried to buy coffee and I couldn't buy coffee. So I mean, that's system level problems, but yeah.
Hopefully we can work it out.
I mean, hopefully Spectrum can work that out, but yes.
Oh, that's okay.
Commissioner Hartman.
So my only concern about technology is there's a group of citizens in my zone that don't have technology. And how are they going to get the message? So we have to also look at that part of the problem. Whether we do mass postings or utilize the churches as an information point or something like that, that's something that along those lines we need to think about. I'm all for the ADA stuff, but I think it needs to be at Kelly's pace when she gets back to staff, because she's, with everything else that she's got going on right now, she has a pretty heavy workload, being the only person in the office. I would love to do a mass survey as a trial to see how that works. Water promenade, let's see what's out there.
Yeah.
Give 1 or 2 options, 3 options, get what the feedback is, set our plan in motion and go.
Yeah.
And
to be clear on a couple of things, so yeah, there's a certain segment of the population. If you look at the last election, only so many people voted. There's a certain segment of the population that they just don't care. I mean, they just do not care. They're not going to be engaged. If you went and knocked on their door and said, "I'm here from the city and I just want to get your opinion," they still may not even want to talk to you. They may still say, "Yeah, just don't care." So they still may not even want to talk to you. They may still say, "Yeah, just don't care." So, we're not trying to hit 100%. We're just trying to make sure we provide options. So yeah, I don't think this replaces all the others. It's just, can we, is there support for, trying it at negligible cost, and let's see. And if you, all of a sudden, you have a town hall that gets, 300 people virtually versus, the 50 people we normally see, then I think that's, a data point. And so, yeah. And on the ADA stuff, just to be clear, I think that the lift on getting that back on the website, if we wanted to do it, is that you, or is that really kind of the IT team?
It's actually, when we started, when this issue hit us, former city manager put it, gave it to the clerk's office, so Phil and I have been working on that, but I suggested in a department head meeting, maybe getting it, thinking about getting ADA compliance officer for the city, making that position. There's several cities that are doing that, because it's a full-time job in itself to make. When it first started, they were just talking about the agendas, but it's full scope.
Yeah, so to keep stuff moving forward, ADA compliance, I'm talking about to take all the historical stuff and post it.
Phil and I, Phil.
So you are involved in that?
Well,
Yeah.
Really, Phil he took them down, put them back up, but.
All right,
check for
so
ADA.
we'll work, you heard the thing, I agree though, I mean, I'm very sensitive to staff's time and energy on stuff, so, but as we have bandwidth, I think there's support to do that, and the goal would be no broken links. I'm tired of broken links on our website. And again, staff didn't cause that on purpose, it's just we were responding to the environment we were operating in, and it seemed like they were rolling up the coast. Those headlines were rolling up the coast. So I think we made the right call at the time, and I think this is the right call at this time. So, all right, gentlemen, I had about 52 other items, so I guess we'll need another meeting. I really have enjoyed this. I do think we should do another one of these. Maybe, I don't know when. We'll talk about it, but I do think this was good. Just a little more informal, and so. Thank you. Any closing comments, questions?
No, I would do these about every 3 months, because it would cut down time in our regular meeting.
I think you may be right, to be honest with you.
Yes.
I think you may be right, because now mayor and commission comments, I'm not bringing up these kind of things.
Correct.
So you're probably right. And we can maybe even focus some of our, we had a lot of special workshops last year, and we're starting off the same again this year. We might be able to cut some of those back and focus it all on these kind of things. So, yeah. Any other closing comments, concerns? Yes.
I just have one. Staff has all these talking points. Some of these things, there may be already pieces to that puzzle already in the works that we're not aware of. So, if we could just get follow-up on that,
Will do.
Okay.
Like Brandon Center special events. I know that Nancy's been working on that, but maybe we don't know what her and her staff's been doing.
Yeah.
So
So there's an agenda item coming to you on Tuesday.
right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an offering that we've been working with Debbie Meals on, so.
Yeah.
Staff has met with Joel Page on his, and we'll come back with you with the report on that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So it's just, you have this, so you can just, take a look at it and say, hey, maybe we just need to communicate with the commissioners and tell them what we're actually doing. So.
I do, the top two items on mine, I will bring up on the Mayor and Commission report Tuesday night. I think it'll be a quick meeting Tuesday. I've read the agenda. It looks pretty light, so I think we'll have a little extra time. So I'll bring those two up Tuesday night. So you can be ready for those. All right, any last comments, questions? If not, meeting adjourned.